How's it going? How's it going? I'm Godless Sewing, and I hope my mic's on. How is everyone doing? I'm going to put the link in the chat in a second. Wrong button. I'm a bit rusty. There we go. Hello. How is everyone doing? I'm Godless Sewing. Welcome to the Godless Sewing channel. Give me a quick second. It's been a long day. I'm wearing my coveralls because I found this beautiful sewing machine today, and I'm going to repair it live. But give me a quick second. Here we go. All right. If anyone wants to join, come hop right in. How's everyone doing today? I finally added pockets onto my on my trench cloak. It took a while, but I finally got pockets going. And I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I found this beautiful sewing machine. Do you know at this point, in the San Fernando Valley, there's the San Fernando Valley Rescue Mission, and these beautiful people call me whenever they get a good machine going. How's it going, Mo?
Hi.
How you been?
All right, pretty good.
I've been watching your videos. You deserve a trophy for going 5 miles to work.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think people realize how hardcore that is. When I lived in MacArthur Park in LA, and I would walk to, hey Butterfly, how are you? Hey Commander, how are you?
Oh, great. Long time no see.
Absolutely. I'm trying to find this. Oh, here we go. Mo walks 5 miles to work and back. And I feel like Mo should. Yeah. I think people don't realize how hardcore that is.
Yeah, for like a fucking $14 an hour job.
You're still getting for where you live though, is that a decent wage or is that still not enough?
No. I gotta live with my fucking sister. His rents are like $900 a month, $1,000 a month just for a 1-bedroom.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm in my early 40s and the average person my age lives with their parents.
Oh, my parents have been dead for a long time.
At least in California.
My sister.
Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
got a sister who's the oldest. She's 71, and she's like everyone's mama because our mom died fucking 24 years ago.
I come from a family like that. I'm the oops. So I have a brother who could be my father. He's 20-something years older than I am.
Yeah.
How's your day going, Commander 401?
Oh, great. I just got done driving for 10 hours. That was at 5 o'clock local time. So I have basically been up more than since like 6 o'clock in the morning. So I am really, burning the oil, so to speak. And, for what the money is, like in 3 days, my best week as far as amount of work versus money was like 3 days work was like $900. And then the next week, everything went to shit. So the paycheck's probably going to be less per day, but a commercial driver's license will pay off.
I have a Class C license, and I was thinking about becoming a bus driver, but at my job, I get paid just a little bit more than a bus driver does. But I don't know if I have the chops. Do you have to deal with people, or is it just deliveries?
I've actually done bus before. I did the truck, which is just delivery. So there's far less difficulties with, as people suck. So if you like if you happen to be driving a bus and receiving a sermon on why the person doesn't want to wear a mask, and they're all up in your face, and you say, get behind the yellow line, and then all of a sudden you got to stop real fast, and then they get thrown into the windshield, that's always karma is a bitch. And before I did the bus, I did machining for almost 15 years. And I was going to go straight to trucking, but then my mom, during the time when I was getting the CDL, started with the Alzheimer's. So I had this, I found a relative who would help take care of her. And then I want to move to an area with more relatives. And then maybe even, well, I'm not going to say anything regarding, I want to get out. You remember the Jan 6 and all the craziness because people
absolutely.
can't stop worshiping their orange asshole. No, I mean literally
No,
the
it's still where I live. It still goes on to this very day. Really quick, butterfly on my wall. I definitely had an uneventful night as well. It was just hanging out. I went to go pick up my son from my ex-wife's house, and it was literally raining. So it was nothing but me and the drunks on the road. So it was an interesting drive on New Year's evening. And at midnight, my son and I were in a Jack in the Box drive-through. I'm not much of a holiday person, and it's kind of like my son has kind of adopted that, where he doesn't like necessarily put too much behind every single holiday. It's less disappointment.
well, we didn't
I don't
celebrate.
get into holidays.
What's that?
I don't get into holidays, especially the dumb fuck Christmas and dumb fuck Easter.
Because I was raised so hardcore Catholic, Easter and Christmas do not have the same meaning. But ever since I was a child, I've always looked at it from the consumer standpoint, because regardless of how much church I had to suffer through, I was going to get rewarded with a bunch of stuff for Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I have the same value that somebody else would on Christmas. Are you a big holiday person, Commander?
Well, past few holidays we haven't really done much. No, not really. I mean, Jews so don't celebrate Christmas. Hanukkah's more low key. You got the Pesach where you got a really good meal. All right, for Passover, and then you got to suffer with no carbs for a week. But as far as celebrating holidays, I think that most of the celebrations that people do were invented by advertising agencies to get people to spend more money. And if you remember the Peanuts Easter special where Charlie Brown's going through the mall and they got the Christmas decorations up, I think he was saying something.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I feel like that about a lot of holidays. I grew up in the early 80s, and so it was amazing how every episode of G.I. Joe had a toy to coincide with it. Every episode of G.I. Joe, or like the Ninja Turtles, or, pick a He-Man, pick an era, and it was all about consumerism, I do not drink anymore. So 4th of July used to be the greatest holiday ever. But I have not had a sip of alcohol in like 10 or 11 years. So the 4th of July isn't necessarily like I like the fireworks, and when I was a kid, I was a Boy Scout. I know that's a shocker, but we would march. We would march with the Vietnam vets. And I know it was total like Homer patriotism, but I loved that every year. Because I was a kid, you know, I didn't realize all the stuff behind it, you know. But yeah, Mo, I had a serious drinking problem. I would drink moonshine, and like
Wow.
I woke up on the front lawn a couple times. Like I woke up and I had 2 cops standing over me, and they were like, "Oh, I just wanted to see if you were alive," and they literally walked off because I was on my own front lawn. And then when I got custody of my son is when I quit drinking. It was not easy. If anyone says it is, like, I don't know.
I quit drinking 9 months cold turkey so far.
That's awesome. That's
I
awesome.
get high as fuck on weed and hash, but I don't do alcohol.
So where I'm from, we call that California sober. You're all right. Most people quit drinking and smoke pot now ever since it became legal here.
Yeah, it's legal here too. Michigan. Say yes to Michigan.
My pops was a Vietnam vet, and he was part of an organization, and we would march with them every year. They even marched with the Boy Scouts like when I was in junior high and high school. It's a tradition. You know, I have to check. I really don't know if they do it anymore. A lot of the old traditions have been like kind of like over debated, so people just don't do them anymore. But I think there's a difference between like, hey, we're doing this with the people we love, and like blind patriotism. But again, I was raised by a Vietnam veteran, so I have 2 giant casket flags behind me. I made an American cape. I'm a total homer when it comes to Would you consider yourself patriotic? Either one of you, Commander or Mo?
No.
It depends on what you mean. Do I care about the Constitution? Yes. Would I blindly just say America, oh yeah, good all the time? No, because if you love something, you should be able to criticize it to make it better.
Oh, absolutely. I'm right there with you.
I adhere to and observe like the Constitution stuff. But as far as praise and worship of a country, fuck no.
That's actually quite stupid, because then if it becomes sacred, you can't criticize it, and if you can't criticize it,
new Jesus. Trump is the new Jesus, right?
Oh, there is a book out called Donald Trump, Messiah, Son of Man, and it was March 6, 2021. All of Israel was reading the Parsha about the golden calf, which is tied to the Jewish calendar. So what you were going to read was decided 2,400 years ago. And then the next day, Trump goes and stands on top of a Nazi odal rune while they're worshiping a golden statue of him.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was uncanny, the timing of the Parsha reading and the golden statue. Everyone was giggling at the shul.
The Bible story in Exodus says 3,000 people were killed because of worshiping a golden calf. That's in Exodus.
It amazes me. Well, as an atheist, I know the answer to the next question I'm about to ask, but does the average Christian read the Bible?
Fuck no.
No, fuck no.
And I think that's the problem, you know, because like one of the reasons I'm extremely patriotic is because of the way the people I was around, the way I was raised semi-military, and I never looked at it as a country. I looked at it as the people I was around. And, you know, I drifted away from that crowd, and they're still good to me to this very day.
My sister asked, why do I have so many Bibles? And I say, well, don't you think I'm an expertise on what I don't believe in? I use those as weapons against themselves because I memorize contradictions, and I could really fucking tear that apart.
I have all kinds of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Finish what you're going to say, then I'll go.
Oh,
I
I'm
actually
already
collect.
done.
I actually collect a few Bibles. I have a Jerusalem Bible that's cut from a specific tree in Israel. I don't know why it makes it special. I have a James Moffat Bible, which basically he rewrote the Bible, and the Mormon Church actually read that Bible up until I want to say the 70s or the 80s. I have wow. I don't know how many different denomination Bible. I have over like 30 or 40 Bibles. I actually collect Bibles. The more obscure,
I
I'll
got more
collect.
than what I showed you. I got boxes. I find them in the dumpsters in
Hmm.
for free sometimes. But I'm never gonna buy a new Bible. I'll either find them in a dumpster or go to a thrift store, and that's for
Because
the
of the
purpose
way
of my atheist reading.
I
because of
have
the way
a
I work.
JP.
Okay.
I have a JPS, an NIV, and an ESV. I do not believe the New Testament, but it's like fun to go through the whole thing. Like, and you realize that Christians don't read their Bibles. Well, for example, in Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, and Daniel chapter 8, verse 9 in the original Hebrew, the Antichrist figure, the guy who's the figure considered the Antichrist by Christians, the original word in the Hebrew is Karen. Karen, like in carotene, that's where we get it, a little horn. And Trump probably fits out of all the people on the face of the earth. He's the only person I know of who could become a dictator and control the most powerful military the world has ever seen, who compared himself to the King of Israel in the second coming of God on Twitter on August 21st, 2019. I remember that because I was sitting in Minyan services and the Haftarah was Isaiah 40. And all of the subject matter of that week was covered in Isaiah 40, from who shall you compare me to an idol, to the magnitude of the Almighty, to the rights to the land. So it was like uncanny. Everything that was being talked about was in that Haftarah, all of Isaiah 40. And then the next week, the Haftarah was when Samuel was upset because the people wanted a king.
Do you think Trump's gonna successfully start a third party and destroy the Republican Party?
No.
Oh, hopefully.
Because he's been.
I hope he's the albatross around their neck that brings them down. The Republican Party right now really needs to die, or the democracy will die. The Republican Party is the zombie party, and it needs to be put down.
Well, we need healthy opposition, and the problem is
Oh,
that
yes.
we're so polar opposite right now that there's no middle ground. And I think that's the problem, is that people can't come to a consensus because it's so emotional. We live our politics. You know, I always claim to be ancient, but has it always been like this? Because I'll tell you, like, I used to ask my father, like, how were the 50s? And he used to always tell me the 50s were not like the happy days. So,
well, I can give you an answer. Your conservative Democrat would be a liberal Democrat, extremely liberal back in, well, really the two parties were like, the Democrats used to be incredibly racist, yet politically like Bernie Sanders on the government programs. And then Nixon did the Southern strategy. And then we went through about the 1980s up until I'd say the few years after Mitt Romney, where it was just full of the dog whistles, and then the hoods came off of Trump. But the center used to be much further to the left.
So do you think that Trump allowed because in my experience, and I'm not just saying racism, but people always have underlying hatred for something. Because if it's not race, you hate people that don't use their blinkers, or it's always something. Do you think Trump? Because people always blame Trump, but do you think he just opened
The
gates?
problem, Trump is a symptom of a deeper disease, and part of that disease is, you remember when Obama got elected and almost instantly they were screaming communist and socialist and everything that Jack Kennedy did with the blessings of the churches during the deepest, darkest days of the Cold War, all of a sudden became the work of Karl Marx, and they grabbed Ayn Rand's books. There was a guy, Whitaker Chambers, wrote a review of Atlas Shrugged in the National Review. And he said, I can just see where this might lead. Go to the gas chambers, go. He did that after such tight reasoning. I'm quoting Bill Buckley here. Because of Rand's sense of scorn for altruism and charity. This is Bill Buckley said it would create an unfeeling system. So, and when you look at Atlas Shrugged, right, it was written in the 1950s and told rich people, if you don't get your way with democracy, please shut the most powerful country in the world down and behave like a toddler until you get your way. And that was during the Cold War, which would have been a real shit show had they actually tried it. The Soviets would have walked all over the world. I still think she was like a Russian, a Soviet Russian, suck the brains out of people's heads kind of thing. She was a huge fan of Friedrich Nietzsche. And during the pandemic, I got a copy of Nietzsche's book, The Antichrist, which was written at the dawn of the progressive era. And the progressive era was actually started by Christians. So I took a highlighter, and every place where the conservatives hated the way my brain worked, I highlighted it. And it was where Nietzsche was trashing the altruistic.
What happened to her?
Is that us? Or okay. My
Wi-Fi on her end, something about she's not in and she's muted or what?
Oh, she'll oh, there she is.
Oh, did she leave or
okay?
What?
No, my signal. I'm using my phone because I don't have regular internet set up.
My internet is so choppy.
But anyway, it was just like Christians 140 years ago on social ethics care about the least amongst us, advocate for the marginalized. 100% opposite of the ones we got running the show today. I just found that interesting.
Wow.
Do you think, because people always talk about values, how we've lost values, do you think, and I'm trying to say this nice because I was raised extremely strict, so I kind of see what people are saying when they say, oh, values are going downhill. Is it that, or do we have more rights as individuals? Or are people paying more attention to each other?
I would say that number one, as far as the LGBT issue goes, if you don't want to engage in such behavior, you don't have to. So why are you sticking your nose into everyone's crotch? Isn't that what you're... So that's not what the state is for. The state is for controlling those things when consent has been removed. You know, like rape, people taking advantage of children, or taking advantage of those who are mentally incapable of consent. It's not there to regulate adults. So there's that growing attitude amongst the younger set where I don't particularly care what my neighbor does as long as it's with consent. But also what I found is when you focus on what percentage of the population do you think is LGBT? Maybe if you throw in gay and lesbian, maybe about 10%.
I would honestly
Half,
think it's higher.
I would think it'd
maybe
be
about
30.
20 or 30.
Yeah,
30.
because a lot of from my experience, a lot of repressed people, a lot of violence and anger comes from repression. And I think we don't talk about that enough. How people
Hold
aren't
up,
allowed to
wait
be
a minute.
themselves.
Wait a minute. Aren't there people who are gay, lesbian, transgender, and all that? Don't some of them like stay in the closet, keep it a secret, or something? Or don't? If there's polls, more people might not admit to it, or some poll. You can't go
Whatever
by
it is,
polls.
it's still going to be a minority, right? And
Yeah.
Mhm.
half the population is incapable of having an abortion. So they because of if you're a dude, you literally cannot have an abortion. So they focus on 2, 3 things that only that are a minority, a minority issue as far as the number of people who are going to be offended if you oppose it. And then they ignore everything else. It's like, oh, if as long as I don't have gay sex or an abortion, I can behave like a monster towards everyone, be a rotten, thieving, lying scumbag like Trump, and somehow the preachers don't notice because they're only focused on 3 things. So it's basically people focus on that which is not an issue for them as far as temptation goes, if you're looking at the wording, a religious wording, but they don't want to look into their own shit. Like, I actually think morals have gone downhill more in how we treat each other and talk to each other rather than, what goes on behind the closed doors in the bedroom.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. People do not respect each other anymore. And it's shocking to me. Like, let's just take my online experience. It's weird to me. I sometimes in certain crowds, I feel like I've digressed back to high school because they're like, oh, did you hear about this and this person? And I'm like, I don't care. I'm a grown adult with bills to pay. Like, if they're doing something crazy, I hope they don't get in trouble. It's just the mentality of people
Hey,
today is weird.
hey.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go and leave. I have something to do.
Okay. Thanks for joining, Mo.
Thanks. Great to see you.
But I totally agree with you. What do you think that comes from though? Because I always say, like, we where I'm from, people always talk about the younger generation, and I'll always say, like, who do you think taught them? We can say they're depraved and they're all these things, but aren't we the people they're pretending to be? Aren't they emulating us?
Well, the way I put it this way, right? You have people who think that the younger generation has rejected the values they were raised with because we're not worshiping Trump or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, if I started doing that, I would have to turn against nearly everything I was raised to believe was right back in the 80s and 90s. It's like, what's more important to me? Regulating other people's trousers or how we treat each other, how employer-employee relations happen, what kind of society we want to live in.
I agree
Do
with
we
you.
want to be, you must be strong like bull, like ox, like bear. We need to fight in order to survive. Or do you want as George W. Bush's dad said, they said he used to be the gayest president in the world. I want a kinder, gentler America. But
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've heard anyone put it that way, but he was it's just because of the way he presented himself.
Yeah, I remember the President's Fitness Challenge. And I remember George W. Bush's dad made me run a mile. And they were complaining when Obama said, put the video games away and do the homework. That's communism. They'll say, George W. Bush's dad made me run a mile. And
You know
I
what
actually set the record for the entire school for 5 years before someone broke it. But George W. Bush's dad made me run a mile. So the kids, I think it's perfectly reasonable that they put down their video games and do their homework. And some kids must have seen how their parents got completely lost their shit, and like the daughter stopped being a slut or the son stopped being a slut, because you can be a slut and be a dude, and you can be a slut and be a girl. And then they started doing their studying just to drive their parents nuts. I will listen to Obama, but not you.
Do you know, you totally made me remember in 1990, Arnold Schwarzenegger came to my town. They brought every elementary school to our local college because that was the only place that could fit all the kids in the stadium. And this man stood there and told us to stop watching television. and he even said it because everyone was looking at each other like, did Arnie really say that? But he was like, I know. And his excuse was that a movie is 3 hours, which is kind of true. Because even back in the 80s, I would zombie out. Like I would come home, grab my Nintendo controller. Like I get it, But still to this day, he's kind of a hypocrite. The man literally told us to stop watching television. He was like, turn it off. Don't do TV anymore. And everyone was like, you're a movie star. What are you talking about? You're on TV right now. But it was part of that it was like another push of the president's initiative. I still have the patch.
I miss the 90s.
It's really funny that I'm like that too. The older I get, I find myself more and more nostalgic for certain things. That's why in my videos, I'll always put like Ben Sisko, or there's always something that's a part of the 90s, because I was, I'm a huge Star Trek geek. So I was Deep Space Nine was my show.
Next Generation was mine. I didn't get into deep space.
I would watch my dad worked for NASA, and so it was important for him, like, he loved sci-fi. So I grew up watching the original series, which really cool fact, my pops was in Nam during season 3. We'd always get in these arguments. Like, he'd tell me there's only 2 seasons of Star Trek. And I'm like, no, there's 3. And I got to share it with him. And it was awesome to witness this man and have not seen these episodes, So that was really awesome. But when I was a kid, we'd watch Next Gen every week. But Deep Space Nine, that was my show. Do you partake in any of the new spinoffs?
Not really. After they killed Data, in Nemesis, I kind of got upset and stopped paying attention.
I agree with you. It's kind of funny that you bring up Nemesis. I didn't see it in the theaters. I don't know. Something was going on in my life, as an adult, sometimes you miss a movie, and I remember I still own it. I bought it. I brought it home, and I was like, how come no one talks about this? The end of that movie killed me. It absolutely destroyed me. Because if you think about it, I love it when Q would always say that Data was his my professor of the humanities is Data. He, like, it's good to have an objectional view, and Data literally was the objectional view.
I just thought that Next Generation was magical, and Data was always my favorite character.
They did that with Janzia Dax in Deep Space Nine as well, and with Trip Tucker in Enterprise. They get you to fall in love with this character, and then in the second to last season, they literally off your friend in front of you. Jadzia Dax was a hard one, and spoiler in Enterprise if you've never seen it, Trip Tucker in the last episode.
I remember it's a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long.
If you ever go to a con, okay, if you stood like even at the airport and you started singing that song, there will be 20 to 30 adults that will sing with you. I've done it before. Hey, you see it here first. Got some Star Trek items at Rooster's Relics. Be careful, because I will go there tomorrow.
On my way driving to Buffalo today, before I had to turn around and come back home, I was thinking of taking my penguins and all the sets here and the ships and actually doing a series where I'm not just doing politics and bashing people, even though I made a 3D model of a turd and put a MAGA hat on it and made Nick Fuentes talk.
I put a giant black penis on a Confederate flag. It's okay.
Back here, let me show you the picture. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a lizard person. But that's Nick Fuentes, and this is the divorce court episode where she and Marjorie and Nick basically have their bitch fight.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Let me I found a Confederate flag and I was like, what can I do to this? And I put a giant wiener on it. It's pleather. It's pleather. And the original head I had on it, Twitter was like, no, we can't do this. You cannot have this on Twitter. So I took the head off and I put more of a rocket ship head on it. And it was my most viewed picture on Twitter.
Well, I actually, before I got the idea of making a Star Trek penguin thing, I wanted to do an intro of where I made a SpaceX style ship, but only I made it look kind of like a wiener. And then Elon basically says, help fight the woke mind virus. And it's like, send me a picture, and then I debunk one of his stupid memes and reject the helping.
Oh, it's going to take me a second to grab that thing. I have too much stuff in this room. This room is like, it's like a TARDIS. It's endless in here. I was thinking, like, back when I used to do more commentary, I was trying to decide what my channel was going to be, because sewing is like, it's literally what I do. It's my way of life, you know. I was going to do commentary on like African, how crazy Christianity has become in Africa, but then the African humanists started doing that. I was going to do political content, but like lots of people do political content. So I've stuck to my stoner sewing thing, because it's literally what I do. Is there anything like I want to start, I do a lot of woodworking. Is there anything else that you would want to get into on YouTube?
Well, that's kind of like what I was thinking, because all I've done is menial debunking kind of stuff, and then political stuff. And I've got all these models and everything, and I might actually want to do something that is a little more not going to piss. Well, I like pissing huge portions of the population off if they're assholes, but I mean something that might actually catch on. Because my divorce court video with Nick and Marjorie, even though it's got like over 100 views, only 20% of the people who watched it actually watched it all the way through. I guess they didn't get, because it opens up in a courtroom. Let me show you. And I'm playing the People's Court music, and then it goes, Marjorie Taylor Greene wants a divorce from Nick because he's basically a stupid racist, and he counterclaims that she's a attention thirsty bitch or whatever. And then that's about where most of the click-through impression views end, when the penguin gets up into because they're not going to realize, because that raptor is actually from my last video where Marjorie Taylor Greene was abducted from her shit trailer and tased and then put into basically a holding cell and interrogated by Operator Starsky and me.
That woman, like, I don't care what side you're on, she is batshit crazy. She is the definition of batshit crazy.
Oh, yes. She is the bat shittiest of all the bat shit there ever was. And she is outright a Putin-loving bitch.
So
which makes it even worse.
This flag actually got me in a lot of trouble. They almost tried to take my Twitter down because of this. And the funny thing is now I think if I posted it, they would celebrate me on Twitter.
Twitter has always been a cesspool.
Hey, Skids, how's it going? I'll be going for a while if you're around. We're still on Christmas break with the kids, so I have a little bit more time. I homeschool my son, so it's a little bit different on Christmas break. We live like pirates. I'm one of those people who I want my son to have positive experiences, so I make sure that during Christmas break we do at least one or two crazy or exciting things,
What I'd like to do next Christmas break is just go to Disney World. I haven't been there since 2005.
In Florida?
Yeah, and when I was there, some guy rushed the stage, grabbed the robot George Bush's arm, ripped it off, and started beating him with it.
How fast did Disney security tackle that guy?
Very fast. Not fast enough to stop him from vandalizing the robot. And God, they must need Secret Service for all the robots now.
I'll tell you, as somebody who has an autistic child, Disney has some of the classiest staff ever, because I said a crazy thing to a stormtrooper and he was just like, Roger, Roger. They are so polite. It's not even funny. They get paid. They get, I know they go through training, but the Disney staff, that's why I asked you that question, because here in LA, if you get crazy at Disneyland, you will have like 5 undercover cops, their police officers, and the LAPD tackling you. Like, they do not play around.
No, Disney is great as long as you're not attacking people or destroying the property. They're good sports.
I've had nothing but good experiences, but I was actually discussing this with a friend the other day. Here in Southern California, the tickets are now $129. And that's
roughly, I think last time I was in Florida, the tickets were like $100.
Ours jumped from 100 to 130, and people are freaking out. But if you think about it, like, they're gonna stick you one way or the other, because the parking. How much is the parking lot? gosh. I
Well,
forgot how much.
Disney World, you paid maybe $5 to $10 to, they had a toll thing there where you basically paid money to park, and then, well, it's Disney, so you pay through the nose for everything.
We have the Magic Mountain around here as well, and they've actually lowered their prices. And Knott's Berry Farm as well. Have you ever heard of Knott's Berry Farm?
No, I tend to, since I lived in Florida, I was spoiled by Disney. I went to Busch Gardens. I didn't like it as good as Disney. I guess, Universal Studios, the original one, when I first went there, it was crappy, but almost like Disney. And by 2005, it was pretty darn close where I was happy at Universal Studios, Florida.
I love the one here in California, the Harry Potter experiences. I know, J.K. Rowling is a piece of garbage, or whatever her name is. I can't ever say her name correctly, but the Harry Potter experience, like, you feel like you're there. It's unreal. It's unreal. And after what's her face came out as a turf, I went to a Goodwill and found a Harry Potter cloak that was worth $120. I found it for $9 at a Goodwill. That literally that weekend.
I never got into Harry Potter, to be quite honest. I became too old for it just about the time it was becoming cool.
Same, but for me it was more the experience than anything else.
I'm pretty sure the ride is cool. I've seen it. It's like going through a castle on a broom.
They took the old E.T. They got rid of the old E.T. ride and the Backdraft. Do you remember the movie Backdraft?
No, I remember E.T.
Backdraft was a movie with Kurt Russell and Nicolas Cage, I believe. One of the and they're firefighters, and it's about, like, literally a backdraft when you open up a door and you think there's no fire, and then when you let the oxygen in, the fire comes at you. And the Universal Studios here had a whole experience where you were literally on a ledge and you were experiencing a backdraft. And they had that thing for years. People hadn't even heard of the movie anymore. But people loved the ride. Like, we had a Waterworld ride here as well. Did they have a Waterworld at the Universal in Florida?
No, they had the pontoon boat there, just sitting in a little pond or lake or whatever near Jaws, but no, not when I was there. And I remember Waterworld, and I remember originally seeing it, thinking it was cool. Then a few years later, seeing it again and saying, "My God, this is stupid."
See, but I love the cheese. Like, I love Blake 7. Have you ever watched Blake 7?
Oh, no. A fun thing about the chief guy of the Smokers, the guy who played the chief guy of the Smokers, played King Koopa in the 1993 Super Mario. And that guy looked exactly like Trump, only with a little less hair.
I loved that movie. The Mario Brothers. Is that the live action movie?
Yeah, it was the first one they did, and it absolutely bombed at the box office. But it was so ridiculous that it has a comic, it has value, as in it's so bad it's good.
Absolutely. It's one of those movies. I don't know if it's because I'm nostalgic, but, like, I loved that movie. I heard people talking trash about Judge Dredd, and I got in a Twitter fight with people. I'm like, first question I asked, how old are you? Because they were talking about the Sylvester Stallone version of Judge Dredd. And I was like, it may not be your thing, but I love that movie.
Do you see that? Do you see that a badge in the background there? Guess where that's from?
Oh, you know it's so funny. I did not see that. I totally
It's
see
from
it now.
Judge Dredd.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Yes, Liz. Yes, I loved Waterworld, but I don't know if it's because I grew like when I was a I'm not trying to age myself, but at a certain age, I was walking home. They used to film. That's awesome. In my neighborhood, they filmed the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and I would see the double. I would literally be walking home from school, and I would see the doubles fighting these people in the middle of the street as the Rangers were literally smoking cigarettes behind the camera.
And they screwed the actors quite a bit. They were getting paid $600 per episode. And whenever they demanded more money, they just change a ranger.
The blue, like, and the sad thing is, they all lived in my hometown. The original cast, all had not all of them, because the Black Ranger's still around. Tommy just recently died, and he's not that old. He's young. But I don't know which version of the Red Ranger stabbed his boyfriend with a katana in a canyon by my house. Like, they do not bode well. They do not bode well around here. They do not. It's something about this town that just like chews up and spits out Power Rangers. It's really sad. I would see the original Blue Ranger all the time. Do you know he wasn't a geek? He was buff. He did wear glasses, but I guarantee you no one ran up on him because he was a big dude. I'd see him all the time in my local grocery store. I almost want to Google him, but part of me is like, I don't want to Google him because I don't want to know what happened to these people because it always ends badly. It's always some tragic thing where you're like, how did you get on drugs in the suburbs? I guess it's because they had the money, you know?
Well, not the Power Rangers cast. Because remember, $600 an episode.
That's true.
They weren't union, so.
It makes me laugh when you say that because they had so much production behind them, you know? And it wasn't $600 production that I saw, you know, they had full sets and everything in my neighborhood. It was awesome.
They deserved a hell of a lot more.
And I agree with you. And they literally all had really bad endings. But, Gary Coleman became a spectacle at the end of his life because he was a security guard. And he became a liability because anytime people would find out that he's a security guard there, people would show up and start harassing him. Not even like in a bad way, but like, they want an autograph or like, oh, I want to take a picture with Gary Coleman. And he's just trying to work his job,
That sucks because
yeah.
Now he can't work.
No, he can't have a normal job. Like he passed away as well, but I always thought it was so sad. And he took it with stride. And when they started doing, like, he was on the first inceptions of a lot of reality TV shows, but it was so sad to see what they did to my dude. Like, I grew up watching Different Strokes. I think at a certain point, you have to give people respect. Where I live, it's not rare to see a movie star. I walk right past them. I walk right, like, they don't, like, they're just like anybody else, So I try to give them the respect that I would want,
I had a friend who went and he visited the Vatican and he saw the name Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
And the moment that he said, "You're Patrick Stewart," he just hung his head, put his hand up, and said, "My day is done." And he walked out. So he couldn't enjoy looking at all the art that should be sold to feed poor people.
Absolutely. As somebody who wants to be left alone, sometimes I can understand that. Like, one of the biggest joys in my life is when I have free time to myself, I get lost in the fabric store, or I'll get lost looking for patterns, I don't want people to bother me. I just want to sit on the ground and look for men's patterns. And And that's more of a low level thing, but I completely understand. And it's funny you would say that because here in LA, anytime anyone ever sees Patrick Stewart, he is so nice to people. They filmed Picard in my hometown, and everybody had nothing but good things to say about him. But I've met quite a few like professional wrestlers. They were extremely mean. I also met the T-1000. I can't remember his name. The villain in T2.
I do remember.
He is such a rude human being. It's sad. And I actually have ran into him twice now, and he is so rude. I grew up around motorcycle enthusiasts, and he's on a TV show about bikers. And on TV they make it seem like, oh, they're getting in fights every day and they're just criminals. And it kind of went to his head. And there's been quite a few people in my town that are like, this guy thinks he's really a biker. So he hasn't changed much. He has not changed much. But it's just sad when Hollywood stars are, where is that line between they have the right to be like everybody else, but you're also in a public eye? Is there a line?
Well, if I ever met a celebrity, right, I do know that if they're not calling attention to themselves, they basically want to be left alone. And I get very little time to myself right now because I am either working or doing something like this with the shells, or I just like to sit on my computer and make stuff like this.
Exactly. That's like with my sewing. I watched a Neil deGrasse Tyson masterclass, and this one individual was like, the one thing that holds creative people back is distractions. She said it in a mean way. She was like, get rid of your friends, get rid of everything you love. And I'm like, I can't do that. But it's true. Like when you do something artistic, if you have distractions, it really ruins it in a way,
Well, like I was supposed to basically have that divorce court episode done 3 weeks ago when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nick Fuentes were first having their first public falling out. And I think they're still wet at the hip. She just she's still a piece of shit.
They
So,
are crabs in a barrel. They're literally crabs in a barrel. They're just like, oh, this person got busted. Where's Herschel Walker? They were praising the guy like he walks on water. Where is he? What happened to him?
he turned into a bat and flew away, or maybe he wanted to be a werewolf.
Yeah. The other day I saw this thing on Twitter. They're like, I haven't heard from Herschel Walker in a while.
Well, the reason why they're acting like this is actually their brains are broken from the propaganda mill.
Yes.
And they do not process information normally anymore, which makes them, to anyone with a functioning brain, anyone with a still functioning brain, we look at them and we look like they're idiots.
But
to the programmed, they think they're geniuses.
Do you feel that there's people on the left like that as well?
Not as many. And you look at either MSNBC or CNN or I hate to say this, but what we would consider not necessarily Fox, but like mainstream news. And they're always trying to both sides it. Well, we need to basically, the Republicans threaten to get rid of funding for Ukraine. So we need to invent these few progressives who are also equally as crazy. And I'd have to say, well, name them, because, you know, like the left in, like Operator Starsky says, the left and right extremes in America and Europe, you scratch and there's rubles underneath. Well, America is probably a wee bit different in that because Russia helped Trump, it's probably harder to find any like either social media personalities or actual elected politicians on the left who are friendly to Russia. Are we still on?
Oh no. I just said, oh, that's very true. I mute myself because my heater's on.
Oh, the video stopped, and I wanted to make sure that my you know, my connection didn't crap out.
Oh no,
Like,
no, we're still going. I can see.
So like they have to both sides it, but one side, right, it has its own propaganda mill that has fried its brain to the point where like Tucker will cheerlead the country with the sickles and hammers and then go and call everyone who disagrees with him a Marxist. While Tucker is peddling Nazi shit, he'll try to equate the political party that gets close to 80% of the American Jewish vote with Nazis. Meanwhile, Trump is having dinner with Nick Fuentes, who is a Nazi. So they're trying to both sides it. And at some point, you can't both sides it because you've got one still relatively normal group, and then the other one's just batshit bonkers from at least a decade of really hardcore propaganda. In
I'll tell you,
2000,
I agree with you. The Tea Party ruined it for me, but I come from an extremely conservative background, so what I see certain sides as ill-informed because there's like, and it's different because I live in California, and so a California Republican doesn't care about LGBTQIA plus issues. They, you know, there are certain things that they won't hammer on because it's not important, you know. And so, I agree with you. But the opposition, I think they're
you need
ill-informed.
some kind of, well, yeah, I'll give you an idea how ill-informed. It was the last time I went to church because Obama made this Jew want to be a Christian. And I will say it, Obama made this Jew want to be a Christian. You know, you can kind of do that if you actually behave like a Christian. But anyway, it was 2012, and the preacher found out I wasn't supporting Romney. And I was actually stating that we couldn't support Romney. And then I just took all the reasons why the evangelical leaders said you couldn't support John Kerry and just applied them to Romney. So the preacher, the Sunday before the election, he comes in with Cuban flags and swastika flags and hands me them and says, "These are for you." And meanwhile, I'm taking shit from anti-Semites at work, and the preacher knows it. At least I thought he knew it because I was having breakdowns in the church and I said it, but maybe he forgot. So he says, "These are for you." And then I say, "Boy, Nazism sure has changed since the 40s. It's no longer Sieg Heil anymore. Now it must be L'chaim."
Oh,
And
wow.
then I say, then I go, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. I don't care. The Democrats are Nazis. And I'm like, well, if I'm such a Nazi, maybe I need to go to the synagogue. And he's like, they will never accept you back because you're such a Nazi. And then I said, watch me. And then I go, Kol beleva anima, all the way out the door. And then after you've been away from it from a while, they make you go through like a year of just proving that you're sincere. So about a year later, I come back and say, here, proof of my membership. Now apologize. You said they'd never accept me because I was a Nazi, and now I'm a member of his synagogue. And he never apologized.
Pride is ugly. Pride is extremely ugly. Could you imagine people actually having to admit wrongdoing?
You mean you're a Christian, right? And you can't be a Christian without being able to admit that you've done wrong. So heaven forbid you should admit to a human being that you wronged them, right?
Absolutely. Hey, Mark, how's it going? How's it going? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Oh, that avatar reminds me of when I did model rocketry. And 4th of July was always fun because I had a license to fuel my own things, which means I could make my own fuel. And even though I didn't make anything go boom, you know, were able to introduce certain metals to make all the different colors.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. This sewing machine is giving me absolute hell. And like I always say, they either turn right on or I'm going to be working on this one for a week. I'm so glad you're here, Commander, because this would be me crying at this sewing machine at this point.
I used to buy old stuff and play with it. And I used to have a machine shop in my garage before a fire. And I know what it's like to tinker, and it's fun.
It's an absolute love of mine. I call myself like tool time because I grew up son of an engineer. And so my dad was always building something. He worked for NASA, Boeing. So he'd take me in these huge hangars and I would see planes being built. And like, so I've just always been one of those people who I'm like, oh, I'm going to take this apart. I don't know how to put it back together, but I will by the time I'm done. But I've been sewing for a long time, and sewing machine, it's kind of like a bicycle. It's built on a simple principle. And once you understand that principle, it will always be a bicycle, you know? I say that all the time. Like, is there ever more of a design that hasn't been messed with more than a bicycle?
The lead screw.
Yeah. True. Very true. Because even if you like look at the original motorcycles, they're still based on the same principle as the new ones. There's more bells and whistles. Except
there's
for
more power, better engines. They still prefer using chains because the gear drive has all sorts of problems with it, and it's not as efficient as a chain.
Butterfly, what fabric are you working on? Ooh, I'm interested. Oh, that reminds me. I put pockets on my trench cloak, and I don't know what has taken this long. I'll put it on in a second, but I completely forgot. I got so excited about the sewing machine that I forgot that. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you ever make anything out of metallic fiber, like actual woven aluminum or something like that?
Wow, no, but I'm thinking, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I'm thinking about making my own parachute and jumping out of a plane with it.
Yeah, I think that is not a good idea.
Surprisingly
it's
enough.
and it's just that um you know, guaranteeing, how do I put this? I wouldn't do it even if I was like, I wouldn't make a flying machine and get into it, even though I was a machinist for 15 years.
So NASA, and this is more the old school original NASA suits. They were made by someone's grandma. NASA employed like 4 or 5 women who made the original spacesuits. So they were sewn on like Singer sewing machines.
I have a video of that because I was going to make a video debunking allegedly Dave, and
Okay.
in 2018, and I somewhere on some hard drive here, I hope I have the hard drive, I have the video of them sewing every single bloody stitch they had. It was a video on it. It was
Awesome.
amazing how they did it and how they counted every single stitch. 1, 2, 3, and they did it very slowly. And those suits cost millions of dollars.
Yeah. Exactly. That's awesome, Butterfly. That's awesome. You know, it's one of those things. It's funny you would say that because that's how they build a plane. They use a bunch of small parts and they build it slowly.
Well, that's
Anyway.
if you want it to stay together. Just make sure everything is there. Let me tell you about the deck of the New Mexico. It was a nuclear submarine. We made these bolts. They were the holes were bored on the deck, on the torpedo deck. Now they measured each and every one of those holes because you want something that you can unscrew and take off, but you don't want a lot of play where after a good long time, your holes warp out of round and then all of a sudden things are moving and shaking. So we held 2/10 of 1,000th of 1 inch on the diameters, and they were all different lengths. So they take all the bolts that we spent about an hour a piece on, probably 40 of them. And then they take them over there and just shove them into any old hole they want with square pegs, round holes, live puppies, smashity, smashity, smash. And then no one says anything until they go to sea trials. And they can't load the goddamn torpedoes because they rushed. They didn't even bother to, because we labeled each and every one of them, which one goes into what hole. And they didn't take the time. So they bent the deck of the New Mexico to the point where they couldn't load the torpedoes. And I do not know whether or not it caused structural issues. This was 2009. No one
Yikes.
got fired. And then the executives gave themselves a raise the next quarter.
Hey, Caroline, how's it going? How's it going? I'm trying to get this sewing machine together, and it is giving me HE double hockey sticks, but I'm gonna let it soak for a while. While you were talking,
What are you doing?
This is a 1966 Sears Kenmore sewing machine, and with a lot of the older sewing machines, the parts rust and they seize. So I'm doing what I call soaking. I know Mormons don't get excited. I'm literally just soaking the machine in WD, which basically cleans it. Then I come back through and I put more oil on the moving parts, and it slowly gets the machine moving. I have a bad feeling the motor's a dud on this, which will make it really easy because I could just take the motor off and put another one on. But I wanted to show, when we were talking about building things with smaller parts, this is my dad's old vest. Hold on, let me and I actually saw this plane. I actually witnessed it being built from start to finish. It's a Globe Master. There it is. But I literally saw it from a frame of a bunch of wire bolts, and it looked so strange to a humongous plane.
That is an awesome jacket. I love how it's like embossed.
Oh, exactly. They did that for what they called the Boeing family. Basically, if you work there, it's a lot of do you use Blue Creeper on your machines? Yes, I have, but it depends. Like, some of that stuff is hard to come by. Like, I have to Amazon a lot of that stuff because they do not necessarily like we have sewists here, but I'd have to go to a specialty store to find it. This this is totally embossed on there, and they gave it to everybody who they gave the jackets out to everyone who worked on it, and this is like the last one left. So I love this thing, and it's getting ratty, and I try not to wear it too much because this is like 30 something years old.
As far as removing rust, when I first had my first tool and die job, my boss, we had nothing to do, so he said, take this Clorox and I want you to wipe all the machines down with it. And like, what are you, nuts? She'll be fine. So wiped them down. You didn't see anything, but the next morning, every goddamn machine, all the tables were just covered in rust. So I said, get some Pine Sol. She said, Pine Sol? And she's got ammonia in it. And I can't remember why I said that, but I remember just it had something to do with the pH was what was going on in my head. And the Pine Sol, actually, we soaked it, and after about an hour of it soaking, we were able to wipe pretty much almost all the rust off.
I've learned just to have a little bit of patience, but I'm not necessarily the most patient person. So I love remedies like that because I learned all kinds of third world stuff from my chlorine is an oxidant.
Well, do you know what gives Clorox the quality that very few other bleaches have? It comes from the origin of the Clorox company. They made oxidizers for World War II hand grenades, chlorates and perchlorates. And what you do is you take anything that's coated in platinum, and that's your anode. You might want potassium chloride. Start with that because that just gives you a little bit more higher energy stuff when you're done, and also it makes a nice violet color when you use it in pyrotechnics. So rather than the high pressure sodium color from regular salt when you use it, but that's what I was talking about when you made things with the different color flames. And then you run electricity through it and you get bleach. And then you take the bleach, and I haven't done this in years and years and years, and I'm never going to do it again. You take the bleach and you put it in a freezer, and then all these little chlorate crystals come precipitating out. And you just mix it with sugar 50-50, and it makes a good rocket fuel.
That's good to know. That is good to know. I'm gonna come back and write all that down. I work on a ranch and have access to a giant shop. And so I get to do all kinds of crazy experiments and like show my son, oh, if you mix this and this chemical, it does this, or don't mix these two. We have lots of fun up at the ranch.
Yeah, just don't have any platinum or silver present when you have saltpeter dissolved in water, because that will create a toxic gas that you won't feel anything at first, but about 4 hours later, you'll start turning blue and your blood will become cyanotic and you will need to go to the hospital. So never use any either platinum bearing material or silver bearing material in the presence of that. That's how they make nitric acid.
You totally reminded me of an ex-girlfriend of mine where we started talking again, like in the middle of the pandemic, and she legitimately told me to start drinking colloidal silver.
Oh shit, that stuff will turn you blue. And
I'm allergic to everything. I'm a born asthmatic. There's a list of things I can't eat. So I don't go near, I don't play with stuff like that. Like I don't play with my health like
yeah,
that.
that is colloidal silver is stupid. And they used to use it because silver has antibiotic properties, but consider this, right? The term blue blood.
Yes.
One of the side effects of colloidal silver is it turns you fucking blue. And, in real life, not just with an avatar, in real life. And that's kind of like screwed up. So don't do it. Antibiotics work better than colloidal silver.
And it wasn't like, Caroline, you're killing me. Blue wouldn't be a good shade on me. It was just really sad because she's a normal functioning human being. She functioned in society just like all of us, and she got swallowed by the Fox News stuff, and it was weird to watch someone I respected turn into like a real Fox News advocate, literally being like, no, you should just try ivermectin. Don't listen to what they're saying, just try it. Like I want to know how you get there in life. Like, how would you ever get there?
Well,
Hey, mister.
finish.
Oh, no, I was just saying hello.
I talked to an uncle recently, and he started using the word socialist. He hates Donald Trump to no end, but I think he's falling into that too. He's getting on in years, and he used to be a Republican, and then Chris Christie's lard ass and the Tea Party cured him, but I think he might be relapsing. I just ask, Uncle, why did we have the Cold War if all of our NATO allies would have been considered socialists and communists during the Cold War? Did the Cold War happen because the Cubans had James Bond's healthcare plan, or was it about democracy?
I always tell, when anyone ever says that, I ask them the question, what does socialism mean? Because I want to hear their explanation. I want to hear their explanation. I would not look good blue. I would not. I made nitric acid by mixing potassium nitrate and sodium. Is that
So
bisulfate?
yeah, that will do
Together
it
and distill it.
too.
It makes very pure nitric acid. Potassium nitrate and sulfuric acid is another good way.
We got a bunch of people with Mr. Foley's. Mr. Foley was a high school chemistry teacher who's going to teach us how to fight all the Eichmanns, and no one ratted him out.
I had a teacher that used to smoke joints with kids, and no one ever ratted him out. And by today's standards, he would be put under the prison.
Well, Mr. Foley just taught us how to make bleach and not to mix silver and saltpeter and water, and told us exactly why you're not supposed to do it, and then told us if it ever happens how to vent the room. But to keep, it's a clothing dye, but it's also the antidote for the gas that's made. It's called amino blue. And we learned this in high school, and he told us, don't tell any of the other teachers.
I still can. That's one thing I'm not allergic to is antibiotics, but pretty much allergic to everything else on the planet.
You know, there's actually a real alternative to antibiotics, but there's very little investment in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's called bacteriophage. And it has done wonders for antibiotic resistant bacteria. There's these viruses that hunt bacteria. And when antibiotics was basically discovered, basically all the research went into antibiotics rather than identifying which bacteriophage liked hunting which bacteria.
I almost died trying to absorb humidity out of an old house using pure ammonia. Stupid idea of mine. Do you know what's really funny? When I was a kid, I mean a little kid, my father, because we grew up around firearms, chemicals. It was the 80s. But he'd always tell, do not mix pneumonia and bleach ever. So I've always been scared of
chloramine gas.
I've always been
Mustard gas.
exactly. So my whole life I've been scared of ammonia. I don't deal with it. My whole life we have it at the job. It is dusty. It's dust. Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, and get some citric acid. Put it in a microwave with some urea crystals. And you will create carbon nanodots and they will fluoresce under ultraviolet.
We have all kinds of acid at my job, but it's more for the septic tank. And
Well,
it literally
citric acid you can get in the store. It's a white powder.
Because there's stuff at my job where I have to like sign for, and no one's allowed to touch it because if anything happens, my name's on it. We even have
sulfuric acid, nitric acid. There's this wicked stuff. I'm trying to remember. It's the only thing that dissolves gold or platinum. It's aqua asia, which is a combination of nitric acid and I think hydrochloric. And when you're mixing acid, you need to decant it. So you just don't dump your sulfuric acid or your nitric acid in the water where you're going to dilute it. You have to basically pour it together because there's going to be a reaction between the water and the acid that creates a lot of heat. And if you, especially sulfuric acid, and if you don't basically control it by mixing them together in small quantities as you're pouring it very slowly, the acid will just boil over because the water will get so hot and start boiling. So it's quite dangerous to handle if you don't know what you're doing. But
that is literally you just gave the safety speech at my job, which is like if you can't read those chemicals on the wall, don't go near that cabinet. If you do not know the chemical composition on that wall, don't even bother going in that side of the room. Oh, but it is that's a good life advice. If you can't read it, if you don't know what it is, don't touch it.
pretty much.
It kind of reminds me of I know I'm a total geek, but there's an episode of Stargate when Cam Mitchell, it's his first real trip out through with Daniel Jackson and everybody, and he touches something and Daniel Jackson looks at him and he's like, hey, new guy, if you can't read it, don't touch it. And I always thought that was really good life advice. Like if you don't know what it says, don't go messing around with it,
Or even if you do know what it says, but you don't never been instructed how to handle the chemical, don't touch it.
Very true. This is very true because when I was a kid, my dad gave me an erector set, and I was like, "This is just a bunch of screws and pulleys," which I eventually made a crane. It was awesome, but those old science kits, they gave you chemicals.
Stuff that you can't sell today.
Yeah, exactly. It is so true, Caroline. It is so true. When I was well, keep in mind, I was like literally raised around Vietnam veterans. When I was 14 at an event for veterans, they were part of a group called the Lost Patrol. I won a shotgun in a raffle and they gave it to me. And I was a little kid. I was in my Boy Scout uniform and they gave it to me. My mom promptly took it. I didn't see it until I was like 20 something, but it was a different time back then.
Well, we never had guns around our house, though we did have a retired Hasidic Florida state trooper who had a bloody arsenal, and he would take us out without my mom's knowledge into the Everglades and test out the ammunition that he made, where he could fire it from a M1 right through a tree trunk that was about 2 or 3 feet thick. And he had alligators he probably wasn't supposed to.
Oh, I know all about even like in places where you're allowed to hunt gators, you got to have tags. You have to have certifications. I still, before I pass, I am going to go to Oklahoma though, and I am going to do noodling. Do you know what noodling is?
Yeah, you stick your hand in a catfish hole, and the dumbass catfish just grabs on, and you walk out of the water with the catfish attached to your arm because they have virtually no teeth.
I used to watch a show, and this was back when like counting cars and stuff. How you doing, dude? This is back when counting cars and stuff first started and Pawn Stars, but they had a show on the Discovery Channel about noodling, and they were in Oklahoma. I was this close one summer to taking the family down there. I will do that before I pass. That's definitely on my bucket list. I'm sure I can go noodling around here somewhere. And magnet fishing. We talked about it the other day. I found a really powerful magnet. I'm going to go magnet fishing.
What, where you feed the fish steel pellets or something, and then you come back with a 6-inch by 2-inch neodymium magnet and just suck them out of the water?
So I had no idea that magnet fishing existed. It's people who go and get metallic items out of rivers and stuff. People find rusty guns, money, every coin you could possibly, anything that's metal, there was this guy who found 9 e-bikes in a river somewhere. And they were technically his because he fished them out of the river. It's basically getting an extremely powerful magnet and fishing stuff out of a river. And I've recently found out that this actually exists.
Well, go down to South Florida or then use a really powerful magnet, and you can find lost tourists along with their rental cars.
I have a metal detector, and it is amazing how much money you will find. My son and I, when he was younger, we used to go just to the beach, and just on a skim, before they dredge the beach, you will find there's been times where we found $30 to $40 worth of change. We were out there for a while.
I sweat change. I sweat change. I get out of bed and there's coins like bum, bum, bum on the floor. So I can imagine.
Oh, that's funny, Marsha. I found heaps of stuff magnet fishing, but since I was doing it in a boat harbor, I mostly found beer tops. Stay around. People drink so much at our beaches, so I wouldn't be surprised. I found a lot of
Well,
change. I found a knife once. Nothing like I saw this guy in Oregon. He had gold doubloons. He found Roman coins, all kinds of crazy stuff. Have you ever heard of the show called Diggers?
no.
It's two very over enthusiastic men. And because it's reality television, I don't know if it's real or not, but they find like Confederate belt buckles. They go to old battlefields and find awesome stuff.
Yeah,
I
that's illegal. We had so many battlefields around where I used to live, and they were like, if you find anything, you got to turn it in. It's illegal to go hunting on your own. You basically, you're, they don't let you.
It's the same thing around here. If we find any type of Native American artifact, you are legally obligated to turn it in. It is a law here. Like on the property, my pops used to always say, "Do not go digging. If you find anything, just leave it there." Godless, I get this at Harbor Freight. I used to loosen it and clean old vintage sewing machines, and they're locked up good stuff. I'm serious. I'm writing down everything you guys are saying, and I forgot what Butterfly said, but that it made me laugh. The product, it was crud something. It made me laugh. Crud cleaner or something. I'm trying to look. It was hilarious to me, but I am writing all of this down. I use certain products
Is
because they've
my
been good.
mic coming in okay? Because
Yeah,
I heard some feedback and it sounded very choppy.
you're coming in good. I had to switch phones.
Finish what you're going to say. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. The volume, crud cutter. I definitely need something like that because I come from like more of the industrial side of fixing things because I come from the mindset of an engineer and a machinist. And so I'm like, oh, this works. This will strip a bolt off of a plane. It's got to work for a sewing machine. So I am all about learning and growing. And little godless sewing secret, I have been cursed out by people who are like, you're using WD-40 or 3-in-1 oil. Like, I've actually lost a subscriber or two over 3-in-1 oil.
Well, that's silly. I used to use WD-40 all the time when I had the machine shop for even like tapping holes. Not necessarily any machining operation where I would vaporize it, but for like tapping holes, it was marvelous.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at hockey scores. My phone is buzzing and beeping all over the place. And
I
I'm one of
haven't
those
been to a hockey game since 1998.
What game did you go? If you don't mind me asking.
The last one I went to, you had the Panthers were playing the Penguins, and you
Awesome.
had some drunks in the background who were screaming, Lemieux, Tara Lipinski could kick your ass. And then they sent Stanley C. Panther up there to try to distract them, but that only got them riled up more. And I wanted to come back because the drunks were more entertaining than the game.
It's really funny you'd say that. One of the reasons I stopped going was I started taking my son with me, and then I noticed how angry and rowdy. Like I never noticed how many fist fights because I was involved in these things. I just keep walking. But when you come with a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old to a sporting event and there's 20 grown men fighting in the parking lot, it lost its it completely lost my love. I'd rather watch it on television. And also quitting drinking, really, my tolerance for idiocy really went down.
Well, I have never had swallowed alcohol willingly. So I'm just usually a ball of anger at the world.
I'm gonna turn a light off really quick because my power keeps on jumping. I have 2 panels in this room, and I have a bad feeling my power is gonna shut off. Oh. But I have 2 panels and like 3 mega backups in this room on my computers, but my lights have been jumping. Southern California cannot handle weather, and so our infrastructure is old by American standards. The California infrastructure is old, and it just cannot handle extreme weather.
Well, I
WFO's
used to live in Florida, and then I came to Virginia, and the power went out when we had the worst stuff when average thunderstorm from Florida would put the power out in Virginia.
it's it's like that too. I got in a car accident. I hit a power pole. I cut off power for 17,000 homes. I was on the news. Like, it was bad. It was bad. Oh, I'll never
You
forget
know,
that.
you know, some shitheads out near Puget Sound. I think it was in Washington or Oregon. Shot up 3 substations recently and took out power for a metro area or something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
Hey, Gilroy, how are you? Awesome. You quit drinking 4 months ago. My tolerance for stupidity is down in the basement. I I'm telling you, when I quit drinking, hockey is it's my love. If I had better lungs, I would go, but I would play more hockey. But um, I was like, wow, were these people always this rowdy? Was I not paying attention? I know, I know. I I could show you comments where people are like, "I'm unsubscribing from your channel because you use 3-in-1," or like, and I understand, like, I am not a technical human being. I'm like, look at this whiz bang, look at it go, like, look at this whirly gig. It drives people mentally insane because I have all these antiques and they're like, why isn't he speaking my lingo? So I completely understand.
And
Well,
then the power in your house, right? Just before I had a house fire that destroyed everything, I had gotten a heat treat furnace for sap fires up and running with molybdenum disilicate heating elements because it has silicon in it.
mhm.
When silicon heats up, the resistance drops. So you need ever more and more current to get less and less increase in temperature. And in
Mm.
order to actually have that thing running, I only got it running once, but you could barely have anything else on in the house. But it wasn't my furnace that actually destroyed the house. It was the people we bought it from about a decade earlier had their cousin inspect it, and the house was full of aluminum wires.
Oh. Sorry, I'm really shocked that this guy's giving me a hard time. Might be the motor. It's as someone who owns a business, at least on my side, it is illegal for anyone I'm related to be an inspector or even walk on the property as an inspector for that very
Well,
reason.
yeah, the insurance company said they were pressing charges against those people.
I
You
would.
know,
Oh
it's a
man. Oh
conflict
yeah.
of interest.
Oh, big time. Big time. I Because at my job we go by the book. It's easy to break a law like that. But in the end, you're gonna screw everybody over because they're gonna have a house fire because your cousin doesn't know what he's doing. I wouldn't hire my cousin, and he's an electrician.
Well, the cousin was a licensed inspector who should have known better.
Mm-hmm. That's so funny there, because the state of California has been so ripped off by contractors. We have a stack of laws here where you have to be here for a certain amount of time. If you're, you can't just show up from out of state and start bidding on a job, or let your cousin
that
work.
makes sense.
A long time ago, like 14 years ago, I did a lot of tiling in this mansion. Tiled the bathroom, I did the showers, and like one of my specialties is I do handicap rails. Like I basically make handicap bathrooms, and so they wanted the handicap bathroom downstairs. Cool. Well, the contractor came in, subcontracted all this out, took all the money, and literally ran out of state. And stuck every single one of us with thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in debt.
That sucks.
Yeah. and from not necessarily from that case, but like, we all went to the board. We're like, hey, we got ripped off. So literally 2 years later, they passed a law where like, nah, you have to show residency. You can't just be some multi-million-dollar company. Like whoever's doing the work actually has to be there, I like typewriters, and there are people who legit have ongoing beefs over what oil used to. I'm telling you, I have got so much hatred from my oil that I don't even bring it up because it freaking triggers people. But being on the internet, like I am a non-offensive channel. I'm not talking about stuff. It's amazing what people get offended by. Thank you, Kilroy. Thank you. That's my whole motto. Like, if it works, I'm not like, I have a real rule. Does it float? If it works, I'm not going to wag my finger at it.
As someone who had a machine shop in their garage, I completely understand your frustration with people nitpicking at what oil you use. In fact, I had a supervisor who he was really upset because he brought me a part that was case hardened. I had my own cobalt drill set. So somehow, because there was like a flaw in the case hardening, I was able to get through one side of it. And then, the middle of the piece of material is relatively gooey and nice. And then when I tried getting through the other end, I already told him, I know this is case hardened. And he's like, no, it's not case hardened, when I was using the center drill. And then I try to get through the other side. And I was like, eh. And he says, what do? You're using oil that has carbon in it. And like the milling machine, it might be doing 60 RPMs. Because at this point, I know going through the top, it's case hardened. And after that, he forbade me from using any cutting oil because it had carbon in it.
That's crazy.
I wasn't getting it hot enough to harden it. And then just because he wanted that thing done, and it just wasn't getting done.
The impatience of bosses is the beginning of many stories. Or something I get annoyed with as well, I'm sure you can identify with, is like, what you're doing to a certain extent, and somebody who isn't necessarily somebody who doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about wants to criticize you on something they have no idea about.
Oh, yes.
That is like my new pet peeve. Somebody read me down, and like what Kilroy was saying, like I literally had this in my head, like like literally what Kilmer was saying, like, you really want to spend your life doing this? Like, it's so strange, the idea that people get of you just being online, you know? And then someone was telling me about myself, and I'm like, wow, I wasn't there for that. It's strange how offended people get on the internet.
Over the least little thing, but yet they have no problem. Well, some people who get offended by things like oil or things that no one should get offended by
Absolutely.
seemingly don't mind when Hitler gives a speech.
Exactly.
It's
exactly. It drives me crazy. Like even recently, like on my Twitter, I have this patch. I'm surprised it hasn't been taken down. It says "Kill Nazis like your grandfather did." I thought this whole conversation was mute. The fact that it's even being brought back up drives me mentally insane. Like Kanye should be thrown in a jacket and given some applesauce and help. You know, I am so tired of like, even with certain types of racism, I'm like, how did this come back into society? Like we already beat that up. Why is it coming back? You know?
It's coming back because people are assholes. And it's coming back because they knew that as soon as the people who saw it in living memory, as soon as that was gone, there was going to be a major push. Just like when the Greatest Generation died, all of a sudden everything FDR and Jack Kennedy did was labeled communism and socialism. And when the Tea Party rose, I immediately figured there were Nazis coming because Friedrich Nietzsche was Mr. Jews are commies, Christians are socialists, God is dead. He coined the slogan of the Third Reich before Hitler was born. And the psychology he inculcates into people is that of I am the superior one and everyone else is shit. So you can tell.
Totally.
And I've actually met Jews who, there was one Jew near where I lived who was cured of his Klansmanship when he saw the reaction of his fellow Klansmen to Donald Trump. And he was like, well, that man's a fucking idiot. How can you support him? But then there was another one who is, I'm afraid to say, so far gone. He went to the synagogue that I went to, and I made a comment about the hat. And how could you ever wear a hat like that after Donald Trump praised a Russian dictator? Come on, you're a Trump supporter. You're supposed to be fighting commies. Why am I the one wanting to destroy the Russian Empire while your boy is cheerleading them? And then he told me, you don't know about America. You think America is a cruel and racist country because you've been brainwashed. So then I talked to him, and then sooner or later, he says we need to bring America back to the days when only certain people controlled things. And when he said certain people, and I'm trying to save your channel, he was being cruel and racist.
Do you know in my
and I do not know how Jews can turn Nazi like that, or black people like Conway West. I do not know how one can undermine one's own existence like that.
I've said this since the first day that I've literally plugged in a microphone and sat in this chair and started my YouTube channel. I will never understand people who vote against their own interest. Even you know, I have known many black Republicans, okay? Many. I was actually in an organization with quite a few. Not one of them voted Republican. 4 4 years ago or 8 years ago, so it really depends on the person. Some people are self-hating. Do you know, I get a lot of gripe from people because I'm not what they would consider a stereotypical black person. So people give me grief all the time. All the time. I'm from the Valley of Los Angeles, and I do not pretend like I'm from anywhere else except for the Valley, because that would be a disservice for me to pretend like I'm from Compton or Carson or Watts. I don't know. I have no idea what someone from there goes through. I can sit down and hang out with those people and and commune and be friends, but I will never know what someone's gone through, just as someone will never know my experiences because I grew up in the suburbs.
Be
So
who you are. So
exactly. Kilroy, I love what you're saying, and that we didn't take Never Forget serious enough. I'm not kidding you. I don't know why. In one generation, people became Holocaust deniers. Twitter was culture shock for me because I didn't get on Twitter until I was in my 40s. So I got on Twitter and I'm like, flat earthers exist? People like Holocaust, like, what is wrong with you? So it just kills me. I don't get it. I just
I
don't get
have
it.
seen the tattoos that Hitler left on the arms of Holocaust survivors.
I have as well. So and I think and I'm not saying you and I are from the same generation, but it's because our generation experienced that. We have much more of a like, hey, this is real, more of an understanding. Do you think because of that? What do
Yeah,
you
and
think?
also
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
with me, memories that aren't even mine, that through oral tradition, I will learn from people who have been dead for 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my father taught me a bunch of gut bucket songs that were passed on from generation to generation, from literally like slave songs that got turned into blues songs, So oral tradition is important.
And you have the stories of the old country, and I'm not going to go into them, but it gives you an appreciation for what people went through. When people start screaming communism over food stamps, you say, boy, that's dragging your ass over the graves of countless millions of people murdered by communists.
Exactly.
And people don't respect. Well, if you don't learn from the history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I remember Kinky Friedman was running for governor, and the state legislature removed teaching about the Holocaust from Texas schools while a Jew was running for governor.
That's Do you know what's really funny? And where I live, it's required that the students go to the Museum of Tolerance or something that's its equivalent, because we want our children to actually know what went on. But the state of California is different because we actually educate our children. It's not like Texas where people are fighting. They're mad at Boo Radley. Are you kidding me? Required reading is considered offensive now. It just boggles my mind. People don't want to
Oh,
read. Sorry, go ahead.
the state of Virginia, where I went to community college, some of the early American literature books that I learned from, they said there was CRT in them because they talked about Bartholomew de las Casas,
Oh,
who
come on.
chronicled, and they basically just mentioned real history. I mean, it's not pretty, but it's not going to damage anybody to learn bad things happened back then.
I'm gonna run to the sewing room really quick, but I know a very extensive amount about my family history because somebody with my exact same name is a professor at Ohio State University. His aunt literally went to the old country, researched my family. We got DNA swabs. In my family history, I have over 30 people that served in the Civil War. Okay, and my dad's side of the family, they're from South Carolina and Georgia. 27 of people in my family were Confederates, and 25 of them were African American. And actually,
John Wesley Powell is related to me. He's the guy who I'm related to him. He charted the
okay,
Colorado River, and
awesome.
all my relatives were either in Poland / Russia / Ukraine or Italy, and that would be my mom's side of the family, or they were here in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois as Quakers or Methodists, and none of them owned slaves, or they were all abolitionists. That's on my dad's.
My I always talk about how on my mom, she comes from a long line of Spaniards, and so my history is like it's literally on my dad's side he comes from slaves, and on my mom's side she was the first person in 700 years to date out of her bloodline that wasn't of Spanish origin or from the old country, so to speak.
It's all right if you wind up not doing that long enough. You wind up getting, well, genetic,
Oh
well,
yeah.
let's just say congenital diseases.
Oh, I always jokingly say that in Los Angeles, we have an extremely deep gene pool, and I'm kind of not joking because that's very true. I've been to the town in well, at least in Mexico. I've been to Sinaloa, and everybody looks alike. Everybody. I can honestly tell you what part of Mexico someone's from just by looking at them because it's so tribal there. But I'm sure you could do that with many different places if you spend enough time there. I lived in
Well, can I give you an idea? I have a friend who went to a synagogue I went to. Her son, we know we are not related for at least the last 400 years, and probably longer. Her son looks exactly like my grandfather did in his 30s, because her son is in his 30s, but exactly like a clone.
oh wow. We
And my best friend looks exactly like, well, me, except for I am about 80 pounds lighter. But when I wasn't 80 pounds lighter, we looked identical.
I did not know this, Kilroy. This may be off topic, but I don't know. But I was floored when I found out that the concept of the SCOTUS confirmation hearings exists because of anti Semitism and the desire to keep the first Jewish justice out. I did not know that. Did you know that, Commander? I'm going to run to the can
No,
real quick. I'll be right back.
no, I didn't, but I know anti Semitism runs deep. You know, because like Christianity, right, is supposed to be something which sets up the king, a Jewish king who will rule over all the nations. And then somehow the Christians seem to think that they need to prevent what they say they want to bring about. It's actually really quite weird. And when I went through my Christian thing and I was being subjected to anti Semitism, if you want to know what a snowflake looks like, Read a Nazi Romans 9. I'm paraphrasing here, but I'll give you the gist. The Apostle Paul says, I have unceasing anguish for the sake of my kinsmen according to the flesh, because they are Israelites, and to them belong the promises, the glory of the law and the covenants, the matriarch, the patriarchs, and from their, and then I use the word race in front of the Nazi, came Jesus, the Messiah, and the Nazi threw a giant wrench at me because he just melted like a little snowflake when the Jew read him the New Testament. So I've never understood anti-Semitism whatsoever. And when Jews read Nazis the New Testament, they get pissed.
I always come in the middle of the good part.
Well, I was responding to that, and I was just stating that, like the Christians claim that Jesus is the Messiah. He's the son of David. He's a Jewish king that, according to the Christians, will one day rule the world, right? But then all the conspiracy theories about why they need to fuck everything up is to stop who from creating a one world order that's supposedly prophesied in the book of Revelations, where every nation, tribe, language, and culture will be gathered around the throne and around the Lamb. And then I also mentioned that one time when I was working at a really shitty place and I had Nazis as coworkers and I got sick of them, I read them Romans 9. I, the Apostle Paul, have unceasing anguish for the sake of my kinsmen according to the flesh, because they are Israelites, and to them belong the glory of the law and the promises, the matriarchs and the patriarchs, and according to the race, according to the flesh, came Jesus, the Messiah. And then the Nazis threw big, heavy wrenches at me. Because they just melted like snowflakes when I read them the New Testament.
But from my experience, most bigots and people who just have blind hatred, it comes from ignorance. So anytime you shine a light on that, they literally want to fight you, because you're killing the illusion.
Yeah, I kind of knew that I was killing the illusion, because one of them came up to me and said, I only read the gospel. Well, I'm making the white conservative men feel like pagans and having to teach them the New Testament because they want the Bible taught in schools, but they seem to be offended when I read them the parts that they never read. And it's just weird.
That goes back to what I was saying earlier about how I stopped arguing with most Christians because they don't even read the Bible. So that's where I just kind of weirdly, respectfully bowed out of the entire thing.
Well, that's what I actually respect about atheists. Atheists have actually read it. Most atheists have. I'm not saying all.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're raised in a religious household, to become an atheist, you actually need to not, like they say, you just hate God. No. You had to go through some sort of deprogramming or detachment, and that's usually when you check out the dates of the census, right? And it turns out that Herod would have been dead, or I'm trying to remember exactly what the problem was with the census part. And then there's no virgin. And then there are a lot of more sensible explanations regarding for to us is born a son, is given, to his name shall be, they were talking about someone in their day.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I I just had the magic moment, but please keep going. I finally got this machine working.
Oh, that is awesome. I know the joy. I know the joy when something starts working. But like
geez.
you actually have to go through a process of examination of your own beliefs before rejecting them.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems is that people, they're not willing to look inside themselves and challenge themselves and be like, hey, maybe what I believe is wrong. I was told that if you weren't Catholic, you were going to hell. I remember as a child being like, that's wrong. I think that's wrong because what about my I grew up in a very diverse area. I had friends that were Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, Mormons. I still have lots of Mormon friends, and I thought they can't all be bad people. but I
No, and I
challenge
never got eternal punishment for temporal crime,
really quick.
right?
I just really quick. I want everyone to hear the just this beautiful Japanese 1966 motor.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'm just shocked that I got a seized machine going. Okay.
Oh, I know the joy of getting a old machine tool finally working. I can appreciate that.
And that's why I made my Mormon soaking joke because that's literally what I do with these machines. I just soak them. I let them sit there for a minute and eventually they figure it out. That's one funny thing about the internet is there were a lot of religions I was really ignorant about. Like even though I'd grown up around Mormons, I really didn't know much about the religion. And then I started watching videos and people reading the Book of Mormon, and I'm like, that's what they believe. That's great. But I
I
try not to
have
judge.
some videos that they put out in the 1950s that are really off the wall batshit.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, butterfly on my wall. I feel accomplished. I just and it's not just any religion that has a persecution complex like the Jehovah Witnesses, or it's just so intriguing to me because I didn't grow up in that environment. Don't get me wrong, Catholicism is a death cult. They tell you to pray to dead people, to believe that when Jesus was born, all the kings and everybody danced around Israel. So I'm not claiming innocence here.
Well, persecution complexes are usually either you're actually being persecuted or you're in a cult. There's only two options. And persecution complexes where there's no persecution or not any persecution really worth worrying about is really just draws the group together and makes it more close knit, which is why cults use it.
Mm-hmm. My introduction to Mormons, what Mormons believe is watching South Park. Do you know, I will say South Park, the one thing South Park exposed for me was what Scientologists truly believe. When they, it's one thing to like, oh, ha ha ha. When they illustrated what Scientologists believe, I'm like, wow.
Lord Xenu.
I'll never get over that because where I live, Scientologists have power. They have massive, massive amounts of power. They own Hollywood. If you stand on Sunset Boulevard, anything heading south, well, for a good 2 or 3 city blocks, which is huge, is owned by the Church of Scientology. I worked at a tattoo shop that paid their rent to the Church of Scientology. So I was just shocked. My impressions of
And you
Mormons
know,
is
that's interesting because the hate mongers blame you know who for owning Hollywood, and it turns out it's not you know who, it's the Scientologists. It's
they
like if you
own.
look at the Jewish population of New York, and then you look at the percentage of the people who are Jewish involved in banking, and Jews are underrepresented in the banking sector in the city of New York.
But people don't want. They don't want facts. They just want propaganda. They just want propaganda. Right? I grew up in Oceanside. A lot of different cultures there to take place all over California. It's the only statement which is such a big melting pot of cultures. New York has big mixing pot, but call.
New York City has big mixing pot. Upstate New York, maybe Syracuse.
I've been to Buffalo and it's pretty segregated. But
I've driven through Buffalo recently, and there was 3 feet of cocaine on the ground.
I had a good time in Buffalo. I had a great time. People were nice to me. I went to a hockey game wearing the opposite colors. People were so nice to me. That would never happen in Los Angeles. I would like if you go to LA and you're wearing opposite colors, you literally get beat up. So shout out to anyone who can handle the opposing team's fans coming in your stadium.
It was never a problem for me. I wasn't gonna yell at Mario Lemieux that he sucked. I actually had respect for him, even though I was rooting for the Panthers. I just thought the drunks were amusing.
It's not just hockey though. Because of Twitter, like it has me not wanting to go to football games anymore because I see just like it's one thing to go to a game and you see the drunks acting crazy, but it's another knowing there's going to be a brawl every time you go to a game. And I see that more
It's
and more
like
in
you're
football.
finish what you were gonna say.
Oh, sorry, I burped. It just seems more violent to me, and I'm a hockey fan. And it just like the fans just seem more violent. And I've been going to sporting events since the Rams and the Raiders both played in Los Angeles. So it's just strange to me to see how crazy things have become.
I'd like to go to a British soccer game, football game, excuse me, because Gary Isle of Wight was showing me videos of how the fans behave, and some of the fans brought a 9-foot tall dildo, and then the inflatable one, and then the security took it, and they were chanting that they wanted their dick back. And then they were chanting all sorts of other funny insults towards the team, and it looked just the other team, and it looked like fun. And then they were chanting, "This is nothing special. We lose every week."
Have you ever heard of football hooliganism?
Oh, yes.
Like in the UK, there's people that on the day there's a match, they literally lock themselves in their house because there's gangs of drunk young men running around fighting each other. That's the stereotype. I'm sure it's worse.
Well, there've been huge riots, so I've seen pictures of the riots, but as far as the game goes, it looks like they were having great fun.
Carol Ann, I weirdly watch curling. I love curling. I fall asleep to curling events. I'm subscribed to Curling Canada and America, the USA curling team and the Canadian team. I remember when I went to a basketball games when I was a kid and it was kind of chill. Now I see videos of brawls at baseball games. That's what I'm saying, Kilroy. Like I would go with my brother and like it was chill. And we were just goofy people. We stuck out and no one ever messed with us. And it just seems more violent. And because I have an autistic teenager, it's just I don't want to put him in a situation where we have to like run away from a brawl or some guy gets thrown. Like I've seen some really, really bad fights lately. And it's more like East Coast football, but it could happen anywhere. And I live I love curling. I watch it all the time. I love it. Um I stopped
They
going to
actually use a they
oh
use a
sorry.
special granite.
Yes, and it's from Scotland, I believe. I quit going to Dodger games because it was so hardcore. Dodger Stadium got so bad that they have a police station there, not a substation. There is an active police station at Dodger Stadium because it got so violent.
Wow, I have not, like I said, last hockey game I've been to was 1998, and last baseball game I've been to was probably 2004, 2005.
Oh wow. Men with brooms. I definitely have to watch that. And it's because of the information era. Like when something happens now, everybody on Earth can watch it. And I think that's the
Monkey
problem.
see, monkey do too, because they see people behave like animals, and they say, "Oh, it's okay for me to behave like that," and then they wind up getting arrested and losing their jobs and all sorts of stuff.
I agree with yes, and it's just so now when there's a brawl, it gets put on Twitter and everybody sees it, especially like I'm I'm part of, people say, "Oh, I'm part of gay Twitter," or "I'm part of this Twitter." I'm part of LA Twitter. So whenever there's a brawl at a stadium or something, it pops right up. But what Kilroy is saying is totally true. Um it's back to what we were saying earlier. People have just become more rude. They feel more at home to say insane things. Just the most, just like you look at someone like, why did you say that? I even found that at a hockey game, somebody would like, people are just, it's sad. But do you think that's because, like we were saying earlier, standards of what is considered being polite has gone down?
Yeah, and there's something in psychology called the Lucifer effect.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you get accustomed to a certain amount of bullshit, and then someone pushes the bullshit even further. You get accustomed to that, and pretty soon all the norms of society have broken down. And there you have like 15% of not of any population who are contrarians. You have about 5 to 10% of the population who are fucking sociopaths, who basically are contained by the morality of the rest of the population.
It scares
And
me. Oh, sorry. It scares me when someone says, "Oh, I don't do that because the law tells me not to." Wait a minute. Wait a minute. That means if this particular law wasn't in place, you would be literally be committing crimes. People like that scare me.
and then they're like, and then you have these people who say, well, if you get rid of the belief in God, then everyone's going to behave like an animal. Well, do you actually need the threat of an all-powerful being coming to give you an eternity in hell to keep you from just behaving towards others the way you would want to behave? What kind of monster are you that you need that kind of threat just to behave like an adult?
Absolutely. Absolutely. it, and that's where one of the reasons I quit watching a lot of debates, because I would see a grown man say, "Oh," or a grown woman say, "Hey, if this wasn't, if this is God's law, if this wasn't in place, then I would be doing this and this." And I'm like, no, that's abuse. Like, regardless of what you say, you'd just be abusing another human being. And I always say, there's a reason why we have these laws. It's against people like that. I've come to a point in my life where You know, and I'm a parent, so it's different, but like I really don't go out that much. I don't partake in the craziness of society because like I live on the outskirts of Los Angeles, but it's turned into Gotham City. And that's me like not even like oh being an old fuddy-duddy like LA has become crazy. You know, I miss the old days of outings. It was awesome, fun, laughing, and only you had to worry about was Uncle Tom falling asleep and snoring loudly. You literally, yeah, yeah, yes. And that's another thing. I don't go into too many public gatherings anymore because I'm scared of terrorism. I used to go to festivals all the time.
Well, I'm actually not particularly scared of terrorism. But to give you an idea, the threat does exist. I just don't want to let it run my life. When after the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, for example,
Mm-hmm.
my synagogue hired cops and they got guns. So if any shithead goes in there, we had weapons to send you back to hell where you belong. But you know, at the point where you need to basically have that kind of stuff to feel safe, you know, I don't know how much we actually need it because those kinds of shootings are few and far between. But I don't want the douchebags to keep me from enjoying things.
I try not to let them, but there's been a lot of like there was you know in America there's shooting everywhere, but there was a mass hooting at a regional center. That's where people like myself take their children or adult mentally or physically disabled child for resources. And someone walked into one of those buildings and fired many shots. There was a school hooting over by my son's elementary school. My ex-wife
Oh shit.
one day I literally had just dropped my son off for school. It took me 45 minutes to get home because of traffic. I pull up, walk in my garage, I turn around and my ex-wife is standing in my she's standing in my garage and she's like, "Have you turned on the news?" I hadn't. There was some child walked into a high school which was I don't know 3 blocks from my kid's school, and then he was running around the neighborhood and he was running in the brush behind my kid's school with a firearm. So it traumatized me. It really traumatized me. And that day, 60% of the parents picked up their kid from school that day. And every single were like, "Why are you picking up the kids on the paper?" Every parent was like, "You know why." Nobody, you know, everybody was like, "You know why." Hey, Doc. Doc, if you want to hop in, I'll send you a link. How's it going, Doc? How's it going? But it traumatized me. And with the whole sports thing, like it just seems like there's a fight at every event I want to go to. And I'm one of those people, I do not go running towards catastrophe. I try to avoid it.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a good idea. And I eventually have a goal to get the heck out of Psycho Jesus land. And if you happen to be a Christian and watching this, but you're not a douchebag, that did not apply to you. You have to use your religion to try to make other people miserable to make yourself feel better for me to basically call you a douchebag and tell you to shut up because I know that people find value in religion if you choose to have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um really quick to what Gilroy was saying. I don't know where you live, but here in LA, the cops protect Pride. There is a literal, there's a literal line you have to walk through just to attend Pride, and if you are wearing any kind of like religious iconography, and I'm not saying like if someone was Hasidic and they walked in, they'd be told to leave, but in LA, we have a crowd of Christians that go to every event and tell everyone they're going to hell. So the cops are literally looking for those people. So the Pride in LA is really protected. And where they have the event, there's a sheriff's station literally on the same block. So in LA, there's like, it's a huge, huge party. But I don't know about other cities. And I wouldn't, if I didn't feel safe, I wouldn't go somewhere either.
And that's what I was talking about, people using the religion to make other people miserable.
After the Rose Parade, when I discovered this as a kid, because I used to go to a lot of events, and it's the same psychotic Christian cult, but they have banners that say, oh, if you're this or this, you're going to hell. And it's basically everything on those banners. It is anything that you could possibly think of. You know, and it always starts off, if you're Jewish, if you're Mormon, if you're Muslim, if you're gay, if you're straight, like there's no leeway for these people. And they have this 9-foot Jesus puppet that it takes 4 people to move. And they've had this thing since I was a child, because I saw it at the Rose Parade when I was a little kid. I saw it. I've seen it at a Slayer show. I've seen it at too many Hollywood events. I've seen it at Pride. It's disgusting. And the cops actually look out for these guys, you know, because they follow around any event and they just say, oh, if you like rock and roll, you're going to hell. If you like soccer.
You know, if you're Jewish, you're going to hell. So I guess Jesus, being a brown Middle Eastern Jew who ran around the Judean countryside telling people to love their neighbors and to care about people they don't know and will never meet. Well, according to them, I guess you know who must be in hell. And then you had Pastor Jeffress, right? One of the Trump preachers who said, if Jesus was running for president, I'd say, ick, that's the Antichrist, and run the other way. No, when I'm looking for leadership, I'm looking for the meanest SOB that I can find. So you literally found the man who is the exact opposite of Jesus in every way imaginable. And I am monitoring this. I have found over 50 points at which Trump would match a biblical antichrist. And they gather around that dude.
I watch all kinds of crazy stuff on YouTube, but I followed this one human being that was like, look, Trump is the Antichrist, and was like going step by step. And I was like, you know, as an atheist, you almost have me convinced.
Well, like I told you, the prophet Daniel used the word Aaron.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, you did say.
And Trump went, you go into where Trump's dad is from. His dad is from Kolstad, which is in the Rhine River region, right? So you look at the history of the Rhine River region, and the oldest city in the Rhine River region, oldest city in Germany, is Trier. Now, Trier was founded by an Assyrian prince who, when Babylon was sacking Israel, they were also sacking the Assyrians. So you have Assyrians and Romans, because Constantine hung out there, and that was the only city that the Romans ever occupied. And you have various prophecies which say the Antichrist will be of the people who destroyed the temple. That would be the Romans, but also the Assyrians. So you have that. You have Trump's mother, who goes into who's related to the Plantagenets, and the Plantagenets make a BS claim but a claim nonetheless that they're descendants of David. And one of the progenitors of the Plantagenets was actually the first Crusader king of Jerusalem. And there are Orthodox rabbis in Israel who are simply out of their fucking gourd, who have been trying to link Donald Trump to the Messiah. So
really quickly, have a great night, Butterfly. Thank you for commenting on the live stream. You're awesome, and thank you for showing up. It shocks me when people try to make that man the Messiah. It absolutely shocks me.
And when they say, well, he's got the Cyrus anointing. Well, the Cyrus anointing, the word was Mashiach, which means Messiah. But let's break Cyrus down. Cyrus, amongst all the rulers of the ancient world, was a fairly good ruler. So when they say Trump is a Cyrus, what they're saying is we went from Barack Obama to Hitler, and somehow that's better. Versus a Cyrus would be like going from Hitler to any of the, I'm trying to remember the guy from Canada, or
Justin Trudeau
or Macron, or better yet, it would be like going from Hitler to Roosevelt, or the comparison they're using is a reverse. And the Medo-Persian Empire was successful because the emperor was not interested in forcing his gods on you. All he wanted was taxes and troops.
Yep.
And he would leave you to govern your own religious affairs and to keep your culture and everything. So it wasn't monoculture forcing on everyone. It was pluralism. So that's the opposite of Trump. So at no way, shape, or form is he a Cyrus. It's not a valid comparison because Cyrus was pluralism, multicultural, just give me taxes and troops and be done with it. So, but it goes back to basically trying to turn a religion into a political party. In 2005, Denise Glasser, when I first started having the least little interest in Christianity, she was the chairwoman of the state Democratic Convention.
Oh, I remember.
She told me, "Why are you wasting your time? They will never accept anyone like you. You have a perfectly good Jewish heritage, and it's a political party. It's not a religion." And she was right.
The sad thing is, though, it's turned into a religion. In my town, people are still wearing Trump shirts. It is not rare to see a bumper sticker that says "Joe and the Ho gotta go," and it's only on a certain side of town, but I still see it to this very day. Even someone I respect, we now do not talk because he is completely and utterly fallen into the Fox News role. My ex-wife's mother, I absolutely love this woman. She has cancer. She is such a good human being. But in the past 5 years, she's sat at home and has watched Fox News.
Yeah,
And
that's never good.
I revere this woman, and she's become a Trumper. And right in front of my face. And because my ex-wife and I, we get along, we co-parent. So I see her mom all the time, and like it's so weird to see someone just morph into a Trumper, because in mid-conversation she'll say, "Well, you know that blah 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 is a commie or something," and I'm like, "You're on chemo. I'm gonna leave you alone."
If she wasn't on chemo, I would ask, so what the hell do you think communism is? Because they don't even know, most of these people don't even know what the words mean.
No, they don't. And that's part of the problem, though, is that they are literally repeating what they hear on Fox News because, and it happens to a lot of people, people plateau and then they stop thinking for themselves. And not necessarily stop thinking for themselves, but they don't engage their mind like they used to. And so it's easy to fall into a trap like Fox News when they're literally repeating the PowerPoints. There, a long time ago, I was in a live stream with it was basically about African American issues, and this one young man who was African American was spouting out Fox News talking points, and the other three panelists were kind of shocked. And I said, "Brother, you're spouting Fox News PowerPoints." He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm just angry and this and this." I said, "Go research it, man. You are a Republican, you know." And he was trying to be a serial contrarian and trying to be edgy, and I understand that generation, but mass movements come and go, and it shocks me when people don't think for themselves. They're not like, "Hey, will this be around 10 years from now?" Because I could have told you Trumpism wasn't going to last forever.
Well, you know, one of the things that actually broke me of my Christian phase was this verse. If anyone, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not going to use all the religiosity of it. If anyone does not teach in accordance with sound views, they are puffed up with conceit and understand nothing. They have unhealthy cravings for quarrels about words which produce enmity, slander, and division, and constant frictions amongst those who are depraved in mind and deprived in truth, who imagine godliness as a means of gain. And it was the obsession with quarrels about words and the misuse of words and not having definitions coherent with words that really bothered me more than anything.
I like that. I really like that. Doc, you're right. When the lefties protest, they come with signs. When the righties protest, they come with ARs. And it is true. I live in Trumpland. You know it's bad when the InfoWorld's watching Liberation at the end of your road is the sanest one. Yeah. Ouch.
Libertarian.
I need my glasses, and I'm sitting far away.
Oh, you want to know something about libertarians, which is funny. This comes back from my Bible study days. There was a group of 3rd century heretics called the Libertine Arians, and they had the same attitude towards obligations to care about others and the law that modern libertarians and sovereign citizens do.
What do you consider, and I'm saying this more from, I was introduced to libertarianism from people who were like, I used to listen to this radio show called Free Talk Live. All they do is sell cryptocurrency. They didn't get interesting. They didn't get interesting until they were raided. They're wherever they lived, these 4 people, they were not high up, but they were, they were part of the crypto conspiracy, and they got raided by the FBI. And it made their libertarian rhetoric go even, it like legitimized them basically. So I have a very skewed view of libertarians, and these people are bat s insane. Like, these people are crazy. So please enlighten me.
Well, the libertarian movement was basically started through Ayn Rand's nonsense. Rand Paul. Why is his first name Rand? Oh, yeah, that's right. Ayn Rand. He was raised on Atlas Shrugged, like I was raised on the Bible. Okay. Now, there's a interview that Mike Wallace, Chris Wallace's dad, did in the 1950s with Ayn Rand, and he says, let me read a review of your novel published in Newsweek. It says you are out to destroy almost every edifice in the contemporary American way of life. Our Judeo-Christian modified, I'm trying to remember, our Judeo-Christian religion, our modified government-regulated capitalism, are ruled by majority will. Others said you've scorned churches and the concept of God. Are these accurate criticisms? She's like, yes, but she didn't scorn churches and the concept of God because she necessarily came to that conclusion because of, there's no virgin in the original Hebrew, or there's issues with the dates of she didn't come to her scorn for the religion due to bullshit within the religion. She came to her scorn of the religion because of the altruistic morality, the feeling that I am my brother's keeper and I should treat others as I would want to be treated. She basically was a huge fan of Friedrich Nietzsche, and she wrote this of William Edward Hickman, in her diaries, a man who abducted a young girl, dismembered her, taxidermied her, and ransomed her back to her father. To give you an idea what her philosophy would do. She says other people do not exist for him, and he does not see why they should. He has no regard for what society holds sacred, and with a consciousness all his own, he has the innate psychology of a Superman. That's from Nietzsche. He cannot feel or realize other people, and she admired that psychology. And her philosophy, which had a huge impact on the libertarian movement, or the creation of the libertarian movement. It's like even William F. Buckley, a conservatives, did not like Rand, and I don't really like libertarianism because in theory, their ideas could work. It would create a hellscape, but it
An
could work.
absolute hellscape.
But there's a peer-reviewed article called Hobbes, Locke, Thomas Paine, and Vladimir Putin's Russia in the ESCO database. And I came across it while I was doing a report on Thomas Paine. And basically, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia tried going ultra-libertarian, and the fucking mob took over. That's what I think of it. You had people talking about Ronald Reagan as if he was a moderate Marxist.
That's basically what the libertarians are trying to do right now. I weirdly follow these New Hampshire libertarians. They've tried to succeed a few times. It just seems a lot of fluff for nothing. Yeah.
If you want to live in a libertarian paradise, move to Russia or Somalia.
I had to laugh because I thought you were going to say I thought you were going to say somewhere completely different. But that's what I'm saying, and I don't think they're I like what Kilroy said about libertarians being like house cats, because they don't realize that they're dependent on, we're in this case, like, we're all part of the system, whether you want to admit to it or not. My father used to always tell me, Liz, I'm you having tonight a crazy night. And it varies depending on who you are, but I was always told as a kid, like, when you're young, you fight the establishment, and then as you get older, you realize that you are the establishment. And so,
oh yes, that is so true. That is so true. Guess who had security clearances to work on nuclear power plants? Guess who hangs out with a Ukrainian press officer? Guess who had online? Guess who has a high opinion of the intelligence community? And when I was 10 years old, I was the thinking I was going to become the exact opposite.
Oh yeah. So I kind of like, I just do not have a positive view of libertarians. And also there's one in particular, I don't even know how I can say this nicely. He's one of those people that's like, oh, I'm in my 40s and my 21-year-old girlfriend and I have been together for 8 years. And you start counting back on your hands, you're like, wait a minute. So I have a very negative view on libertarians because just of this one individual. And like he like brags about the fact that he got away with the fact that he's married to a 22-year-old now and he's my age. So it's just, I just do not have a very good view of these people at all. And if you try to sell me cryptocurrency, I'm going to tell you to kick rocks. Even if I legitimately agree with you and think it's okay, I'm still going to tell you to kick rocks. Especially if you're trying to sell
I never really got the cryptocurrency stuff because and then NFTs I never got around to making any, though I probably missed the boat on that. But the whole blockchain thing is actually connected to libertarianism in general.
That's what I thought, because they've been indicted by the FBI and they still talk about it. If you arrest me, I'm going to shut my mouth. Like, no, that ruined my life. I'm never going to talk about it again, you know? But they...
yeah, not very smart.
It just seems to me that these particular libertarians, and you know what else do they have to lose? They've already been raided by the FBI. They're just extremely overt in certain things, and it's not they're not good salesmen and women for what they're trying to do. They're not pushing libertarian. They just seem like a bunch of stubborn children refusing to pay taxes.
Well, that's ultimately what it is.
Also, they're trying to basically create this weird society out in New Hampshire of libertarians, and they're saying move here. It's just something very Jonestown about that to me. Very Jonestown.
Yeah, here's what John Galt looks like in real life. It's called Donald Trump. Take him out of the magical fantasy world that Rand created for him, where the whole society is crumbling, and yet they can all travel in perfect safety for some inexplicable reason. She was also a shitty novelist. In fact, here's what Whittaker Chambers in the National Review of all places said. There are 2 books that can change a 14-year-old's life. The Lord of the Rings and Atlas Shrugged. One is a childish fantasy, which will lead to a lifelong obsession with unbelievable heroes that will leave one a social and emotional cripple, unable to deal with the real world. And the other book involves orcs.
I agree with you, Doc. Every human in the species is dependent on each other. We live in a symbiont circle. That sounds like something Qui-Gon Jinn would tell Obi-Wan Kenobi. But it's true. It's so true.
Yeah, people formed groups, right? For safety, community, and there was a benefit to it. Now, individuals within a group who are more selfish tend to do better.
Yeah.
But groups full of people who are completely selfish tend to not cooperate. They tend to be destroyed by groups which cooperate better. I actually had an atheist philosophy professor, libertarian, and he tried using the theory of evolution, which is a fact, but the way he was trying to say people form groups and can't live in groups more than 30. So you shouldn't try to form empathetic groups of more than 30 people or else tyranny breaks out. And I actually had to quit that class because he was supposed to cover 30 philosophers.
Oh wow.
And he spent roughly half the time on Rand and then 20% on trying to make Karl Marx look like he is everywhere. And what's fun about Marx, and I'm not saying his ideas ultimately led to fun. What I mean by what's interesting, he was born and raised a Jew. And the cry of the prophet to want to seek justice, correct oppression, and plead the cause of the marginalized made it into his philosophy. There was a lot in there that's part of Jewish and Christian tradition. He could identify and diagnose an illness. The problem was with the prescriptions he wrote to solve the problems. Because human beings are flawed, they cannot be expected to act 100% selflessly in other people's interest 100% of the time. So the prescriptions he wrote were often just as bad, if not worse, than the diseases he intended to cure. But since there was care about the poor, stand up for workers, blah, 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 that's something you would find in Christianity and Judaism. And that's something that the libertarians, because they think they're fighting communism, are trying to crush. I'm not arguing that we should get rid of all private property and have the government run all enterprise. I'm arguing that we should help the disabled and just like do what we did in America during the Cold War, only without the racism, and help our citizens stand on their own 2 feet if they can. But that's where the confusion lies, in that a lot of our more community-based, community-focused, care about the least amongst us morality, kind of wound up inside communism, but it's communism is its own separate thing.
Oh, absolutely. Again, that's why I say I don't even get into the argument with people when they say, oh, that person's a socialist or that's communist, because I know they do not know what they're talking about. The average American, they're arguing flashpoints, they're arguing headlines, something that they've read that they didn't even research. That's why I kind of got out of the debate me bro crowd, because you end up arguing over terms less than substance in any way. Oh, I didn't mean that. I didn't say that. And whoa, they were really saying this. In the end, it gets nowhere. Gosh,
because we can't even agree on the definition of words anymore.
Oh, it drives
Poor
me
little words.
Oh, it drives me insane. I call it the death of language, because people will spend more time arguing over a term than actually trying to find a point. I clash with people because they'll say something and I'm like, do you have a point? I'm not trying to be rude. But
well, do you remember that
situation.
paraphrase of the 2 Timothy about people who have an unhealthy craving for quarrels about words, which produce enmity, slander, and division?
Yes, it's so true, though. I just people who like to habitually fight scare me, because at some point I need some peace in my life, or I'm going to be a raving lunatic.
Well, that's the thing. If I fight with someone, it's because eventually I want a resolution. I am not here for the fight itself. I'm going to bring up a former senator. I don't agree with him on these 2 issues anymore. There was one time in my life that I did, and I'm sorry if I hurt anyone. He was Bob Casey. He was socially conservative, but more or less like Bernie Sanders as far as socioeconomics. He was a senator from Pennsylvania. He went to every Value Voters Summit imaginable up until 2011, when they labeled him godless, a communist, a socialist, a Marxist, and a Nazi, and they told him he couldn't come anymore. They had someone there who met every one of his criteria, one of their criteria, and at the end, they just didn't want him because they wanted an enemy. Or like in late November, early December 2011, it had been 5 or 6 long years ever since Tom DeLay left the speakership. It had been basically ever since 2005. Taking God off the money had not been brought up in Congress, but John Boehner was Speaker of the House. So this was the first time that legislation to take God off the money was introduced. Only 3% in either house voted to take God off the money. The preachers pretended like the vote was close. But if you actually go to C-SPAN and then look at the colors John Boehner was turning when only 3% voted to take God off the money, I could just see the Republicans attack me, attack Jesus. It's my job to be the good Christian and your job to be the godless liberal. Why are you not attacking me? And then there was a preacher I used to listen to by the name of Alistair Begg. He had the chairman of Chick-fil-A over to his church a few weeks before Chick-fil-A did what they did. And the sermon after the Christian Businessman Conference, this prude on the issue of the gay marriage and the abortion, again, I do not agree with these people anymore. He was like, don't make gay marriage an issue this year because people on both sides are manipulating us. So I go and I call them up and I get a hold of his secretary and I ask what happened. And she said, the Chick-fil-A chairman thinks that if Democrats are being nice to Christians, Mitt Romney will lose. And then I said, what do you mean? And she said, you'll see. And then about a week after his secretary said that, Chick-fil-A comes out and crosses the secular employment line.
Oh.
So once you cross the secular employment line, all the concessions that Dean wanted to do or whatever to try to keep the evangelicals from getting upset so they didn't show up to the polls was gone. So they literally invited Democrats to attack Christians because they thought freaked out Christians would be better for Republicans to win elections. And that's sick.
That is absolutely sick. It's amazing to me how much people invest in hatred in this country. And I know I've been to other countries. I know it's not as bad, but it's bad. But in America, we have institutions that go out of their way to oppress people. It's just.
And I'm sorry, at one time in my life, I was a douchebag in regards to some of those issues, but I actually never hated people. And, I'm sorry.
Oh, like I said, we all, you fight the establishment and then you become a part of it. I think after a while, we have to take responsibility. I think all of us have a part in what's going on right now. And I'm not saying that we're the bad ones or anything, but I like the fact that you can admit that because a lot of people can't. I voted for Ralph Nader in the year 2000, so I basically gave a vote to
What state were you in? Because if you were in California, it didn't matter. If you were in Florida, where I was, Florida is the penis of the country.
California, so I gave my vote I did. I gave. That's true. Gore did win California, so so it doesn't
He
matter.
also won Florida, but the Supreme Court stopped the count.
Oh, those were the days, huh? Those were the days. I miss that. Those were like the worst things going on at the time.
Yeah, it would be wonderful if we could go back to the quarrels that we had during those days. They seem mild where
Oh,
people aren't.
sorry, hanging chads. I will deal with hanging chads over red hats any day of the week.
Oh, and there's a new thing in the batshitosphere. It's called the Great Wealth Transfer. And for anyone who was around 10 years ago paying attention to politics, if you wanted Bill Gates to pay the same rates of taxes that I do, people would accuse you of wanting to transfer wealth and call you a Marxist. But all those false prophets who continuously tell us that Donald Trump is coming back and that he's a great Christian leader and not the fucking Antichrist, they're talking about the great wealth transfer, where they will basically take all the money from all the Democrats that they murder and give it to the good Christians. So basically, the people who say they're fighting Marxists are basically promising to do to Democrats what Marxists did to this, So they are becoming everything that they say they're fighting against.
Is that a reoccurring theme in history?
Oh, yes.
Because I constantly hear the cliche of when there's a coup, usually something that's worse comes from that.
Oh, my grandfather sat me down on his knee in the 1980s and told me this: never trust the Russians to liberate you from anything, or the devil will have his due, and you will long for the days when you were oppressed by whatever the Russians liberated you from. So, yeah, it always turns to shit. You never get that utopia you're looking for, especially when lying sacks of shit are leading you to it.
Because I'm unindoctrinated, it just shocks me that people still believe this garb. But there's all around my town, and I live in Southern California, which is lefty land. If you go literally 10 minutes south in any direction, if you said the word Trump, everyone would stop what they're doing and turn and look at you. But where I live in the suburbs, it's just the strangest thing. People are still wearing the t-shirts. When I go to the store, it's not strange to see someone wearing a MAGA hat. And do you know what that person is not wearing? A mask. Because we're slowly getting back to the point where people in Southern California are going to have to start wearing masks everywhere again. And you can
It's just something that happens in like South Korea.
Yeah.
Not North Korea. They don't wear masks in North Korea because COVID doesn't exist there. The government says so. The man carrying Donald Trump's baby says that, there's no COVID there.
Oh, I didn't see this. Doc's joke makes much more sense now. It's just one of those things, and it scares me of how impressionable people are, because you and I are sitting here kind of pointing the finger, but there's people that actually truly believe this crap and then hate me for existing. It's just I don't get it anymore. Like I said, my neighbor literally he won't speak to me anymore because of Trump. There's family members that we do not speak at all anymore because of Trumpism.
It's idolatry. I will tell you, it's straight up idolatry. They neither think nor speak. Well, they become like what they become like what they worship.
Mhm.
When you have a cult, people take on the personality of the cult leader, and their original personality is in fact suppressed. And that's what you see. Times are nice, but whenever you try to threaten that, what the belief system, they turn into Trump, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's idolatry. It's a cult. It is like I brought up when they were wheeling out the golden Trump statue was the same week all of Israel was reading about the golden calf, and there was a lot of snickers now at the synagogue because everyone knew, yep, that's a sign.
Yeah.
They're in full-blown idolatry. And I'm not going to use her name, but there's a nice little old lady right after the king of Israel tweet at the synagogue. She said that when Wayne Allen Root compared Trump to the king of Israel and the second coming, she said, well, in this nice Southern drawl kind of way, why don't we hang Donald Trump up on a cross, stick him in the side with a spear, and then shove him in the ground for 3 days? And if he gets back up, we'll call him our king. So,
Hey, you know what? There's this guy, there's someone I used to listen to. His name was Bobby Hemmett, and he kind of used to say the same thing. If anyone ever claimed to be the Messiah, you should test it. Anyone. Like, okay, all right, you're the Messiah. We're gonna nail you to a cross. Like, it's kind of true though. And I guarantee, and he would always say, if you held messiahs accountable, we would have less messiahs. You know.
Yeah, there was this one guy, I forget his name, but it was actually connected to the rise of Karbala. He was the last time before Trump any serious movement in Israel to name a Messiah happened. And he was called up to the Sultan of Istanbul. And he thought that he was going to be acknowledged as the Messiah that he was. And you know what the Sultan said? If you truly are the Messiah, I will remove your head and you will be able to put it back. And
Yeah.
the man converted to Islam.
Carol Ann, have a great night. Thank you for showing up and chatting on the stream. You're awesome. Thank you very much. I'm gonna end this in like 5 or 10 minutes anyways.
Good
But
night.
I think you and I are on to something. I completely forgot about that whole Bobby Hemmett thing. I'm gonna start that push. Like, okay, if you claim to be your Messiah, you have to show us what you're actually claiming. Because earlier when you said the word Mashiach, it reminded me of in LA you hear people claim all kinds of stuff, but I knew someone who claimed that they were part of a secret Christian sect that had the Mashiach in their in their church. And he when he would speak, he would whisper because it would come out loud. And I remember I was like 19 and I still kind of believed. I was like, can I go see the guy? Where is he? And he, in the end, he was like, no, you can't go to my church. I'm like, well, then if you can't prove it, but it's so strange to me that people still claim that.
If I remember correctly, Matthew 20, chapter 24, there's something in there that if someone says, oh, the Messiah is over here, the Messiah is over there, he's in his secret room. Don't go after him.
Yeah, exactly. If it's so spectacular, I want to see it. Maybe I need to be convinced, Gilroy, a couple years ago, there was a man in England who put $1 million prize up for anyone who was psychic. And he was like, if you can pass my test, then maybe you really are psychic. Still to this day, no one's ever been able to defeat his test.
James Ramsey had the Ramsey Foundation down in South Florida, and he was the guy who nailed Peter Popoff to the wall. Sadly, Peter Popoff is now spreading his miracle spring water. You see, if you give Peter Popoff money, he'll send you spring water and you'll get $1 million. And even though the spring water will get you $1 million, and therefore, if it worked, it could get him $1 million, he'll sell it to you. No, seriously, he'll sell something to you that will just miraculously put money into your bank account, and just not his, right?
I think I've actually seen videos about that. It's again, like, you know what's so funny? I always jokingly tell my son when when he goes to his mom's house, I'm like, there's no such thing as magic beans. You know, I have a list, but it's weird to me that grown adults actually do believe in some of this stuff.
Well, grown adults, but they have the temperament of children.
True. I think that's one of my biggest beefs with, because I'm goofy and I laugh a lot, but I make sure I handle all my business before I sit here for 3 hours.
Well, you need to decompress and you need to have fun, but there's a time for fun and there's a time to realize there's no fucking magical spring water that's going to make you a millionaire unless you're the one bottling it.
Mark Short, you killed me with this one. You just need to pour the spring water on the beans. It's true, though. Going back to like the colloidal silver and all of that, like, I don't know how they get away with this. I think I read somewhere that the religion can light up in the same parts of the brain that cocaine does. So that might explain a few things. Attention does that. There's all kinds of stuff that stimulates the frontal
and then
lobe.
there's the rage-a-hol.
Oh,
that's why all the Trumpers are constantly angry, and that's why all the propaganda networks always invoke anger and rage, because the rage-a-hol befuddles your brain. And actually, it's your limbic system taking over your higher function, so you're not critically thinking. That's why when they start babbling on about bullshit to anyone with a normal functioning brain, it looks like bullshit, it smells like bullshit, and it sounds like bullshit. But to someone who has been indoctrinated, the question of whether you want to be a werewolf or a vampire is a really important one.
On that note, I'm gonna. Do you have anything to shill, Commander 401? I'm so glad that you showed up. This has been awesome.
It has been awesome, really fun. I got two newer videos on my channel. One where Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nick Fuentes have a really messy divorce. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a lizard person. That's why she's a raptor. And Nick Fuentes is literally, I made a 3D model of a piece of shit and put a MAGA ad on it. And then the second most recent video, the penguins basically go in there to Marjorie Taylor Greene's shit trailer, abduct her. They order her to shed her human skins, and out comes this raptor. They tase her, then they haul her off to the base with Operator Starsky, who is an actual Ukrainian press officer, and she is interrogated. It's funny.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm gonna.
And I ray traced it, and it's like early Pixar quality, so you'll enjoy it.
Kilroy, thank you so much. It was great seeing you. I stream every Monday, and so as long as I don't have any drama or anything going on, I will be streaming every Monday from now on at 7 o'clock West Coast time. You guys are always invited. I'm gonna say thank you for watching the show. Always be yourself, reinforce your seams, and I will definitely see you next time. And remember, I'll see you. I'll be around next week. And if you have
All
anything
right.
important, I'm on Twitter, and I'm around. So you guys are amazing, and I will definitely see you next time.
See you next time, everybody.